Feral, like the King Tut.
Ah, Pharaoh. Gotcha.
I thought, yeah, that's better than feral. Yeah.
Here is Karen Sanis
No,
with us.
no.
Well, let's call to order the Community Health Board for December 22nd. Approval of the meeting minutes from December 10th.
Meyer will move to approve.
Kavesi second.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Meyer, second by Commissioner Kavesi to approve the meeting minutes from December 10th. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Approved. Consent or chairperson's report. And I'm going to defer, Marie, I know you were able to attend the SHAC conference Zoom call.
Yeah, it was a very comfortable call. We had an update on the vaccine distribution, and I forwarded a PowerPoint on that. And then, because this was before the vaccine was being distributed, and the most important thing was that we're following the federal guidelines, and the first priority has been identified as the residents of long-term facilities, and also healthcare workers. And then after that, we're waiting for federal guidance. So it hasn't been determined who are the priorities after that. Otherwise, there were some tender moments, some congratulations and some goodbyes to Harlan for his chairmanship, and to some of the employees in the Department of Health that are retiring. So it was a very nice meeting in that sense. So not much information, just the vaccine plan was shared.
Okay, thank you. We have item 4, consent business. Now before we get into that, those are some grants, and Karen isn't on, but Kendra is.
Is Melanie on?
Melanie on. I have concerns because the Department of Health sends contracts directly to me to sign. And my concern is that we haven't discussed them. And I think that's why we're having this meeting again this morning. And I've told them to stop. I just delete them. I'm not going to sign them, not knowing if the whole board has discussed them.
Exactly. That's their process. So when you get them, you need to stop and do what you've been doing, which is asking us if we've been able to get them to the health board, to the county board to approve, so then you can sign them as chair.
Yeah, and they gotta quit doing that. I'm not gonna sign things. So with that, the consent business is 4.1 to approve the Minnesota Department of Health Community Health Board grant project agreement to enhance influenza vaccine coverage, and that's in our main packet, page 43. And 4.2 is approve renewal of professional service agreement with Melissa McLaurin, MALPCC, for professional consultation and reflective practice supervision services for staff involved in the Healthy Families of Southeast Minnesota project. Is there any discussion on those items? Any staff have any additional information?
Move to approve the consent business.
Okay. Motion by Commissioner Jacob to approve the consent business. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, second by Olson. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Okay, those are approved. And then general business, yes, just like Marie said, the vaccine is coming. People are getting notified by category, and we'll just see how that pans out. I think is public health literally doing the vaccinations, or
They're one of the Parts, yeah. There's multiple providers. So you have Winona Health. Right now, they're obviously doing healthcare workers and things like that. But our public health department will play a role in it. Winona Health will play a role in it. Gunderson. You've also got CVS, Walgreens, and Hy-Vee. Those kind of places will play a role at one point in it. So yeah, it's all part of the plan.
Okay, all right. Any other discussion at this time for the health board?
I'll move to adjourn.
Okay. Motion by Commissioner Jacob to adjourn.
Second.
Second by Olson. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Thank you. All right, we got a couple minutes before our regular meeting. Thank you.
Ken,
Yes.
so there are some comments in the chat that the audio from the boardroom is a little hard to hear.
Okay.
Thanks.
Heidi? Did you hear that?
These days, what you need to know is things have changed every day. Anything you really want to use to help you navigate your key, but to make it easier. Feel smarter, feel better, feel happy. How about a third of Good Morning America? Yeah. DNA 3, what you need to know. Lunchtime at 1 Eastern, 12 Central and Pacific on 86. All about you.
Brian, good morning. It's Bob. It's 9 o'clock on Tuesday. I just wanted to check in with you. I sent you an email, and it's a little bit time sensitive. The state back with him regarding some sketches.
Bob Bambanek, we can hear you.
Yeah, Bob.
Bob Bambanek, could you mute yourself?
It's a big improvement from where we started, and we're really pleased overall. But I want you to take a look at it.
Anyone we can mute,
Let me know if you can determine
No.
parcels from the legal that you're providing. All right.
I'll tell you almost get
We will
feedback.
talk to you soon. Thank you, Brian. Appreciate it. Would you get your computer muted? Because you were saying that. It's not.
Does it like the, okay, I can hear the almost feedback. That's perfect. That's usually what we end up with, yeah.
Your procedures, keep our masks on back there when we're up here, take them off when you're speaking.
Sure.
So you know why you don't pick a fight with Santa Claus? This is one of my 6-year-old granddaughter's jokes. Why don't you pick a fight with Santa Claus? Because he's a black belt. He has a black belt. Pick a fight with Santa Claus.
Okay.
I did find my kids in Minnesota. I found the cutest little book, Santa's Coming to Minnesota. And beautiful illustrations. And it for the one granddaughter that lives in St. Paul, it has a lot of the St. Paul. Santa gets stuck on the Capitol. He runs into the horses. His sleigh gets hung up there. He goes by the cathedral. He goes by the Minnesota. It was really when I bought it, I didn't realize how appropriate it was for where. Yeah, he got hung up on the Capitol. I think he didn't pay his taxes or something. Put a political twist to it.
It says you have 25 participants.
Oh, wow. Okay. We're not using Zoom, are we? We're using a different platform.
We use Ring Central, which is
Chinese owned too?
No,
You
well,
heard about Zoom lately, haven't
it
you?
is a Zoom derived product. So
It's all going to China. They know exactly what's going on with us. But it is well, you have to follow who owns who.
So there's so many layers.
Yeah. But they were picking on Zoom the other day.
Oh, they.
Okay. Being 9 o'clock, we will call the Winona County Board meeting. Please join in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
Allegiance to the
To
flag
the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We will open our meeting with public comment. Each speaker has 2 minutes to address the county board. And please state your name and address and then make your comments. See, there's nobody in the boardroom. Somebody out in the audience on the phones would like to comment? Go ahead.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Katie Mueller, free tag, 26743, County Road 15. I appreciate the county board putting the jail size discussion back on the agenda for today. And I want to thank the commissioners for hearing the community's voice. And I didn't see Karen there, but I wanted to thank Karen for sharing her agenda at last week's jail presentation. Last night, the City Council approved the 2021 budget, which included the proposed alternative response team, which I'll refer to as ART. I'd like to share some of the goals of that program and show how that model may work as a first contact diversion program. The ART is meant to provide an alternative first response to police in appropriate cases. Community connectors trained and certified in areas such as crisis intervention, de-escalation, and case management will respond to dispatch calls to assist people in our community. These workers will prioritize referrals, resource connections and follow-ups, and track and support the individuals they seek to access resources. The ART is tasked with assisting and supporting the police department while at the same time creating a trusted, confidential, community-based resource available to all city residents with minimum interaction from the government. With a new city-funded first diversion program being established, I'd like the board to reconsider what the future of incarceration will look like in our county, and whether initial reports from the JAC will hold up under current decarceration trends and alternatives to policing. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to address the county board?
I would like to. I don't know if you can hear
Okay,
me.
go ahead.
Okay. Hi. Um, my name is Megan Dawson, and I am speaking in opposition of the Winona County Jail expansion. Oh, hope I see someone else's. Sorry. I think my screen just went full screen. Okay. In opposition to the expansion and request that a public hearing be granted in order for the other community members' voices to be heard. From the meeting on December 10th, one of the statements in the notes that I had taken down and found to be somewhat contradicting is the following. It states the CJCC recently received a second JMHCP grant to plan and implement a RAP Plus program that will add a jail social worker and a community connector in a partnership with the mental health provider so that there's more focus on the mental health needs of individuals involved in the criminal justice system to divert them from the system and get them the help that they need to stay out of the system. Them are humans. They are humans like you and like me. You and I are no less or more humane or entitled than them, so to speak, as if classifying alleged criminals as a stigmatized group of individuals separate from the rest of society and our community. The language and rhetoric spoken by the committee members at the meeting on the 10th was the epitome of othering. It was blatantly obvious that the individuals on the committee who are coordinating and heading this project do not have as great of an understanding of trauma-informed practices, or if they do, it was not demonstrated successfully. As a working professional in this community, I can speak to firsthand to my experiences working with some of the most vulnerable and high-risk individuals. People don't need to be behind bars to get the help that they need and deserve. What they need is a supportive, trauma-informed community with truly accessible support services. The current jail proposal would be taking multiple steps backwards in the efforts to educate and cultivate a trauma-informed community.
Megan, did you state your address, please?
570 Cottonwood Drive.
Okay, thank you.
Apartment 20, yep, Winona,
Okay.
Minnesota.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else wishing to address the county board?
I would like to.
Okay, good morning. Name and address, please.
Yes, my name is Cara Eggers. I live at 613 East 7th Street in Winona. The presentation hosted by members of the Jail Advisory Committee on Monday, December 14th did not alleviate my concerns about the jail expansion. I am opposed to the large jail proposed because I believe mental health and addiction services must be readily available outside of incarceration. By providing pre-incarceration help, we are investing in our community by supporting our community members. People who need to get addictive services should not have to wait months, weeks, or days for a bed to open up to get the help they want and need. People who need mental health help should get assistance and medication they need instead of being incarcerated. The current jail proposal focuses on helping people only after entering the carceral system. We desperately need to increase our diversion programs to assist people before entering the carceral system. During the presentation, we were told of many programs that are currently in use. A question during the Q&A from a community member about the availability of services in a timely manner revealed that our preventative programs are in crisis and are rarely available when needed most. We must focus our time and energy on preventative programs before building a large jail. It is time that Winona start to invest in our community and not cages. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to address the county board? Is there anyone else wishing to address the county board?
Please.
Good morning.
Good morning. My name's Sam Michael. My address is 1257 Westlake Boulevard. Thank you for allowing me to speak. And thank you for your diligence and the commitment to our community. I got to admit that I have only recently been starting to follow the jail proposal, but it has raised several questions and issues in my opinion. And because of that, I would like to ask for a new formal public hearing in regards to the county's plans for the jail and other means for incarceration. A couple of things that did come up to me that raised those questions is that the expansion and growth of the proposed facility doesn't necessarily, I haven't seen anything that speaks to what the cost of the operations are at full capacity and what the costs are of the facility prior to that, and what is going to be needed to take care of the maintenance and the care of that facility in the interim of that. While the study that was presented is relevant and was new at the time, I think that COVID has demonstrated that many things, many variables change quickly, and it possibly has rendered past suppositions inaccurate. One of these, I think, might be the number of people that we need to incarcerate for personal or community protection. Also would like to see if the transportation costs versus other options can be revisited. I must admit that in my past, and given this is probably 20 years ago, I was incarcerated at one point briefly for a warrant, and I served, didn't serve, but had to appear through CCTV to speak with the judge. And I'm wondering if options like that have been looked at, and if not, if they could be. The $350K that was given as far as transportation costs doesn't necessarily state how many people that covered and what that cost would actually translate into if it was more people or most of the facility. The services that were presented also in the December 14th meeting that was available to mitigate incarceration didn't necessarily aim towards people that had not been in the system yet. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sam. Is there anyone else wishing to address the Winona County Board?
I would like to address the board.
I hear somebody, but I don't hear somebody. It's very faint. Did somebody want to speak?
I would like to.
Okay, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Jason Sealing. I live at 510 Hamilton Street in Winona. As a citizen of Winona, I'm very concerned with the new proposed jail. I believe Winona needs better health and rehabilitation services available to people before they are incarcerated. Jail is not a place for people to get the help they need. Jail often ends up becoming a trap for poor or worse off people. They get in over their heads in bonds, fees, and fines. I don't know how we can expect someone living paycheck to paycheck to take on those debts and overcome them and get the help they actually need. I would like to request a public hearing so more members of our community may have their voices heard. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to address the Winona County Board? Is there anyone else wishing to address the Winona County Board? And for the last time, is there anyone?
I'll address the board.
Okay, all right, go ahead.
My name is Bonnie Hammock. I live at 805 East 2nd Street in Winona. The large jail proposed by the JAC justifies the large size in part by planning for future growth of the jail population. It begs the question, in 2020, municipalities everywhere are responding to the loud and sustained calls to reconsider our reliance on incarceration, examine the broken criminal justice system. Why would Winona consider building bigger? When officials have been confronted with questions about their support for the jail project, they speak to the current diversion programs in place, almost all of which are considered after arrest, after the destabilizing consequences that result from being incarcerated have already been set in motion. Yet many officials and those involved in the criminal justice system and their committees speak to the success of the diversion program. So we must ask, if they are successful and the intent is to grow the programs, why in the same breath do they speak to the need for a large jail with plans for future growth of the people they plan to incarcerate? There has been a consistent reduction in the number of people arrested and held since COVID. Law enforcement and the county attorney reiterated their commitment to public safety during COVID. So why would we return to the days of accepting carceral solutions in the name of public safety? This country incarcerates more people than anywhere else in the world. There are calls for change. We have an opportunity to create systems of positive social change. But if you build this jail as proposed, you move us into the archaic past, instead of proving Winona has the flexibility and creativity to stay relevant and change with the times.
Thank you, Bonnie. Is there anyone else wishing to address the Winona County Board?
I would like to speak.
Okay, name and address, please.
My name is Jessica Clark. I live at 917 East 4th Street here in Winona. I oppose the expansion of our jail. While I do recognize that its current state is not really fit for inhabitants exactly, COVID has shown that we don't need as many people incarcerated in our jail as we previously thought. As a community member who has always feared being put in a cage because of my mental health issues, I would rather have more support for people like me. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. Is there anyone else wishing to address the Winona County Board?
Yes, I would.
Okay, go ahead. Name and address.
Rebecca Vrabel, 359 Ewing Street, apartment 12, Winona. I'm here to request a public hearing regarding the proposed jail facility. I feel there was a lack of public input into the proposed new jail, and I think more voices need to be heard. The recent informational presentation given by the JDCC illustrates this point, as they were overwhelmed with comments and questions. I also object to the county spending between $20 to $25 million for a 98-bed jail when the current use seems to be below 50 beds. At the December 14th presentation, speakers cited that many of the people being incarcerated were identified as having a mental illness, which they claim justifies the need for more beds in the proposed facility. If mental health is being cited as the major reason for this larger jail, then we should be investing in mental health initiatives to help people find treatment rather than imprisoning them. I also worry that the people who work in the jail are officers rather than trained mental health and addiction specialists, which is what people would truly need in a mental health emergency. So this jail would still function as a jail. I don't believe, given the evidence, that Winona has a need for such a large facility, and I would like Winona to invest in public health and restorative justice rather than relying on incarceration as an inadequate response to mental health gaps in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to address the Winona County Board?
I'd like to address the board.
Okay, go ahead. Name and address.
My name is Darrell Warnke. My address is 1928 Gilmer Avenue. I'm employed as a vendor at the Winona County Jail as a mental health professional. I listened to all the conversation. I've been practicing in this community for almost 50 years. I've seen the ebbs and flows with mental health services, both available and not available to people. Right now, the way that it sits, the option of choice in dealing with mental health, unfortunately, is the jail. To have a jail that can provide the different levels of service necessary for the people requires more room. The room for different classifications of individuals, as well as trying to deal with the needs that they have at the time they come in. The jail is not a place for treatment of mental health, but it is a place of stabilization. And to provide that stabilization, it's necessary to have the services, not only the services, but the room available to help people stabilize as they come into the jail. Thank you very much.
Is there anyone else wishing to address the Winona County Board?
Madam Chair?
Yes, Commissioner Meyer.
Yeah, thanks. I wanted to mention to Heidi, if she's the one running the meeting, that I'm seeing in the chat that there are people who are waiting to try and get into the meeting.
Okay, a little note did come up, but we have no control over the chat.
Yeah, no, but I think that whoever's running the technology for us has to let people into the meeting. And so
okay,
maybe she could check to see. Now I see two more people are coming in, so maybe she's got it. Thanks.
Okay.
Sorry for the interruption. I apologize.
No, that's okay. Thank you. I saw the note, but I had no way to control it. So is there anyone else wishing to speak to the Winona County Board?
I would like to.
Okay, go ahead. Name and address.
Yes, Andrea Ducharme. I live at 77 East King Street. I just would like to say that I would like a public hearing regarding the jail size. I believe that the community needs a larger impact. Even now, I truly appreciate that you're willing to hear our voices, but especially after the December 14th presentation by the team there, I definitely had some concerns that I don't believe were addressed. One of my main concerns as someone who works with young people in the community is the center that has been discussed. I would definitely like more information on that in the hopes that it would not be built. I also believe that as a community, we really should have our voices heard and our questions answered. So I would like, I respectfully ask that we have more time and the ability to have those questions answered. Thank you.
Is there anyone else wishing to address the Winona County Board? Is there anyone else wishing to address the Winona County Board?
Real quick, I'm just hearing from people that there's still people waiting to get in that haven't been let in yet.
Okay, let's give technology a chance. Is there anyone else waiting to talk to the Winona County Board, to address the board? Is there anyone else wanting to address the Winona County Board?
I would like to address the board.
Okay, please, name and address.
My name is Claire Richards. My address, I live on Westlake Boulevard in Winona, Minnesota. I just, again, would like to thank the county board for taking the amount of time that you have in regards to this conversation. As was mentioned earlier, in light of COVID and how things have shifted and changed, I am requesting a public hearing so that there can be conversation as to how to adapt out of the world that we are currently in. I understand that everyone on the county board, all of you commissioners have jobs and families, and we are living in tenuous times. So I do know that this is a big ask that we are asking for you to continue to put more effort and energy into this conversation that you've been discussing for a number of years now. We understand that there has to be a new jail. I would like to also respond to the comment made by the gentleman who has been working in addictions in this community for 50 years as someone who is an emerging mental health professional coming in to do work in this community. Sir, I do hear what you said, and I would like to encourage the board to hear that as well, and not hear that as a solution, but hear that as a problem. Commissioner Olson, when I spoke with you directly, you asked how many jail cells do we think is sufficient? And that is not our job to make that claim, to pretend to have that information or knowledge. But just because we don't have that answer does not mean that this conversation is not serious enough to be warranted more thought, more curiosity, more compassion, and more conscious efforts to genuinely represent every member of our community instead of giving up and saying there are no other options. Incarceration is the only option for individuals. At the presentation on Monday, the 14th of December, Karen Sanis discussed the Prochaska model of change in a way that, again, as someone emerging in the mental health field, learning these theories right now, I was appalled at how that was presented, because that is not how I am understanding it. Giving people the opportunity to find programming and resources before incarceration, I understand cannot be funded through the $10 million bond, and that is a capital expenditure, but there should be more thoughtful conversation as to what options are afforded to our county. Other counties can do this. We're seeing those examples in Blue Earth County. We're seeing these examples in other places in the United States. There is no reason to believe that Winona does not have the capacity to continue having these conversations and being curious and compassionate about how to best serve the individuals in our community. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Claire. Is there anyone, I do see 6, is that a 6 in the chat box? Are there other people wishing to address the county board? We are past our time slot, but if there are people that want to speak, please step forward.
Heidi has indicated at this time that there's no one else waiting to enter the meeting.
Okay, all right. So the last call, anybody wishing to address the Winona County Board?
I would like to address the board.
Okay. Go ahead.
My name is Scott Moxtonix. I live at 156 East 6th Street in Winona. I'm also speaking in opposition to the proposed jail project, in large part based upon the educational forum last Monday. One of the talking points that Attorney Sonneman put forward before the meeting and addressed during the meeting was the consultation with the National Institute of Corrections and the other input taken from the sheriff and the current jail administrator. And my question with that kind of input is that you will never get a non-jail solution if you only ask for people in the corrections industry, and I do stress the word industry, to incarceration in our community. And essentially the kind of metaphors and logics that resulted from those sort of folks were talking about the residents and citizens of our community as if they were petulant children, as if they were garbage to be thrown out, and trying to reframe the jail as a home, which is anything but. The other thing that was truly horrifying about the architectural design of the jail is its uncanny and seemingly intentional resemblance to an 18th century panopticon proposed by Jeremy Bentham. The idea of a panopticon is that there's a central watchtower that is very convenient for the guards because they can see every cell at any point of time. But what this also does is it induces paranoia in the detainees, that it causes them to fear constant surveillance, and essentially in combination with modern video surveillance, they lose all privacy and basic dignity. Finally, one of the other talking points in Attorney Sonneman's meeting was that we knew in 1982 that we did not meet state standards, and we knew in 1990 that we failed the ADA. If after 30 to 40 years of knowing that the current jail wasn't working, when will we ever take action if the next proposed jail isn't what we need for our community? Thank you.
Did I hear one more voice wanting to speak to the Winona County Board?
I would like to speak.
Hello. All right, go ahead. I think I heard two voices. Go ahead.
My name is CJ Bramlett. I live in at 5120 West 7th Street. And I would like to request a public hearing to address the jail expansion. I do have questions about the ambiguity of total expenses. I would also like to state that I work closely with individuals at a very high risk within our community with plenty of mental health diagnoses. While working with this population, I've seen several incarcerations. And a lot of times after the incarceration or during, there are conversations about mental health needs that can be addressed. Personally, I believe that being proactive with individuals to provide a solution to a problem that we've seen coming is a basic human right and should be provided. As a community, I think we should support our individuals by providing these resources instead of incarcerating them and then giving them an opportunity for them, for those resources.
Thank you. I'm going to say we've far exceeded our time slot to respect everybody's time. I'll allow one more. Do we have one last comment? I did hear one other
Hi.
voice.
Yeah, hi. My name is Marella Cunningham, and I live on Dresser Drive in Winona, Minnesota. And I wanted to thank the Winona County Board for making the time to continue discussions about the possible building of or the construction of a new jail. I'm just asking that you know, a public hearing and public forums continue to take place on the matters. And I think everything that's been said before me is something that I would agree with as far as just the continued discussion and looking for alternatives. I'll get off now. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. Thank you to everybody that commented. If for any reason you did not get through, please feel free to reach out to commissioners through phone or emails and such. That's always allowed. Moving on. Getting a lot of feedback here. All right. Item 4, approval of the county board meeting minutes from December 10th.
I'll move approval.
Okay. We have a motion by Commissioner Jacob to approve. Do I have a second?
Meyer will second.
Okay, a second by Commissioner Meyer. Any discussion on the meeting minutes from December 10th? If not, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Okay, they pass. Item 5, acknowledge receipt of approved committee meeting minutes from October 2nd of 2020.
I'll move to acknowledge the 5.1.
And that was the land records. All right. We have a motion by Commissioner Jacob. Do we have a second?
Meyer will second that.
Okay, a second by Commissioner Meyer to approve the land records meeting minutes from October 2nd, 2020. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Nay. Okay. I didn't hear. Is Commissioner Olson still with us?
I'm not hearing it.
Yeah. Commissioner Olson, we didn't hear you, so, okay. All right, we're having a little bit of feedback through the board speaker system. Item 6, consent comments and approval of the agenda. Mr. Fritz?
I have nothing to add to the agenda.
Okay, Commissioner Meyer?
I have board action and an announcement.
Okay, action and announcement. Kavesi?
Commissioner Kavesi has nothing right now.
All right, Commissioner Olson?
Nothing for me, thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Jacob?
Nothing for me.
Okay, I do need to ask to pull item 7.4 and make that 8.0 for a separate vote.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I apologize. So there, I maybe can see a little better than you can who is in the meeting. So we have a number of people who are not muted. Someone named MacBook One and phone number that ends in 6392. Maybe we could just ask everyone to mute themselves.
Yes, that's a good, thank you. If everybody out in the hinterlands could just mute their mics, we're getting a lot of feedback in the boardroom and I think through some of those on the phone. So I see a whole bunch of mics that just got muted. So thank you. Thank you very much.
And you have said before, and I've been impressed with your progress in technology. It's better than mine. That it's *6 if you're on the phone. Is that not right?
Yes, *6 or pound. I think mine will do either #6 or *6.
There we go. Thank you.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that reminder. Okay. So I want to pull 7.4 and possibly a future action depending on how the discussion goes today. I'll reserve that. So with that amended agenda. We have a motion to accept the amended agenda.
So moved.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Jacob. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Commissioner Olson to approve the amended agenda. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Okay, that is approved. Okay, Mr. Fritz, if you would read that lengthy list, please.
I will. I'll read the consent business into the record. Committee recommendation 7.1, approve revised findings of fact for U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and Matthew Construction interim use denial. Department recommendation 7.2, approve 2020 assessment of clerical corrections. 7.3, approve CARES Act final report. 7.4 has been pulled. 7.5, approve Minnesota Department of Health Community Health Board grant project agreement to enhance influenza vaccine coverage. 7.6, approve renewal of professional services agreement with Melissa McLaren, MA, LPCC for professional consultation and reflective practice supervision services. 7.7, approve renewal of purchase and service agreement with Legacies, LLC for semi-independent living services. 7.8, approve monthly resolution. Second. 7.9, approve resolution designating transportation sales tax projects. 7.10, approve renewal of detention center interagency service agreement with Houston County. 7.11, approve transfer of funds for retiree insurance for period of 01/01/2020 to 12/31/2020. 7.12, approve elected official retirees 2021 benefits resolution. 7.13, approve authorization of financial reports to BWSR for block grants. 7.14, approve and sign subcontract with St. Mary's University Geospatial Services for water modeling. 7.15, adopt 2021 levy resolution. 7.16, adopt resolution for 2021 budget. 7.17, approve 2021 fee schedule. And 7.18, confirm payment of disbursements. That concludes the consent agenda.
Okay.
I'll move to approve the consent agenda as read.
Right.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Commissioner Jacob, second by Commissioner Olson to approve the consent agenda as read. Being that it's such a lengthy list, I'm just going to do a roll call vote. Commissioner Meyer?
Meyer votes aye.
Bessie took it to heart to mute her mic. Commissioner Kavesi?
Commissioner Kavesi votes aye.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Olson?
Olson, aye.
Commissioner Jacob?
Jacob, aye.
And Commissioner Ward votes aye. So that is approved. Thank you. Item 8, general business. The 7.4 item, adopt resolution for elected official salaries. And I will not I will not support this. When a key member of my household got their increase notice from Social Security, and it was a whole 1.3, but also the increase in Social Security, which a great number of our constituents live on. Also, the Medicare went up. So it really wasn't even a 1.3% increase. It probably was like a 0% increase. And, you know, the future of our generation futures, are they going to get Social Security? I don't think so. But that's kind of how I base some of my decisions as to what a higher level of government sees fit to give people as a pay raise. And we, as a county board, did something far beyond that percentage. So that's my statement to that item. Do I have a motion to approve 7.4?
I'll move to approve 7.4.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Jacob, second by Commissioner Olson to approve 7.4. We'll do a roll call vote. Commissioner Meyer?
Meyer votes aye.
Commissioner Kavesi?
Commissioner Kavesi votes aye.
Commissioner Olson?
Olson, aye.
Commissioner Jacob?
Jacob, aye.
And Ward votes nay. All right, it passes. Thank you. 8.1, approve or deny future agenda item to request Assistant County regarding the potential to open meeting laws. And of course, we got two different types of news yesterday. Of course, County Attorney Simon says we shouldn't be talking about it. But yet we got a court order that is moving the action why this item was requested. So, Attorney Simon, do you have any?
I just want to reiterate what I sent to you yesterday about additional pleadings on further issue on it. I'm not going to go into the details. You can read it for the public record, but so the litigation is not completed, and that's why I'm recommending, and in consultation with the attorney from TIP, Paul Reavers, we both are recommending strongly that this action, that this agenda item be tabled until that litigation is completed.
Okay, and the reason I'm still hung up on it, and I will continue to be hung up on it, is in the next couple of weeks, we have some very important decisions to make. We have to pick, Winona County Board has to elect a chair, and we have to appoint members of our community to these citizen committees. And this directly ties into that decision-making process. So I think we need to be upfront, we need to be open, we need to be transparent as to how we're going to proceed with these things come in the first meeting in January. And so with that said, Any other discussion? Commissioner Jacob.
Yeah. So this just seems to be an ongoing, when Commissioner Ward and I ask if we can try to resolve some of these issues by discussing the animal unit cap. Of course, the county attorney says, no, that's off the table. You can't discuss that. When we talk about the board violations, no, that's part of litigation. You can't discuss that. When we talk about open meeting law violations, no, that's off the table. You can't discuss that. I just want the public to know that clearly I'm on the opposite side of this, and it's not my choice to be kind of sweeping this under the table. I don't know.
Madam Chair?
Frustrating. It's very frustrating.
Madam Chair?
Commissioner Meyer.
Could you again ask people to please mute themselves?
Okay.
Thank you.
Please mute. We don't seem to be having a problem here in the boardroom.
We're getting feedback. Someone named Sharon has not muted.
Okay. Sharon, please mute. Okay, I see a lot of them shut off.
Yeah. Great. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Sorry for that.
That's
Please-
okay.
Pardon me for interrupting you, Commissioner Jacob.
No, technology doesn't always work. Commissioner Jacob, anything else?
No, I think I said what I need to say.
Okay. All right. Any other discussion on this point? Well, one last point, it's not going away. We may have to table it. We may have to delay but I think for public to build back the public trust, I think this is critical. And I've had a lot of constituents say, what is going on, lady? How are you running that board? And again, I'm not a part of what has gone on, and I don't condone what has gone on. Alleged, I should say, alleged. And my interest is getting clear facts and setting the record straight, and then moving this county forward in a clear and concise and a fair and equal and just way through our processes. So,
Madam Chair?
yes, Commissioner Meyer.
I'm happy to offer a defense of allegations that have been made, but the attorney who is representing us from MTIC has asked us to set this aside for now. It sounds like we will have answers fairly soon. And so I look forward to being able to have those conversations then. So in response to the direct advice that we have, I'm going to suggest that we table this for now.
Okay, is that a motion?
Yeah.
Okay, motion to table. Do I have a second? Do I have a second?
Oh, I'll second. I thought I had already made the motion. I'm sorry. I had it muted.
Okay, all right. So we have a motion to table by Commissioner Meyer and seconded by Commissioner Olson. Any further discussion?
It's not debatable.
Oh yeah, no, I'm sorry. No discussion on tabling. You're right. It's at the table where we have most of our discussions as a family. So it's confusing process.
Legal version.
Legal version. We'll do a roll call vote on this. Commissioner Meyer?
Meyer votes aye.
Commissioner Kavesi?
Kavesi votes aye.
Commissioner Olson?
Olson, aye.
Commissioner Jacob?
Jacob, nay.
And Ward, nay. So it does carry 3-2. All right, stay tuned. Item 8.2, approve, deny future agenda to discuss social and criminal justice services. I think Commissioner Meyer.
Yes. Thank you, Madam Chair. To all those folks who have called and who have exchanged emails with me and who are now at this meeting and shared their concerns, I want you to know that I see you, and that I was up at 2 o'clock this morning, and what came to me is that I bring intentions of love to you because honestly, I know that you care about your community. The jail project has uncovered requests for the county to provide more support services for people in need. And what I'm really proposing, and just to clarify, our process is such that what I'd be asking for today is if at least 3 commissioners support the next conversation about this. So what I'm hoping with the outcome would be is to ask staff to come up with recommendations on how to gather input from these concerned citizens, from the public at large on criminal justice and social justice issues. And I would like to see this happen regardless of what the outcome is today or in the future with respect to the jail project. People have expressed concerns about housing, about mental health services, crisis response, confidentiality, restorative justice. They're talking about things that they want to see happen outside of the criminal justice system altogether. And some in their emails have talked to me about things that they want to have happen outside of our health and human services prospect. So with this amount of breadth, I'm not sure that just a public hearing where people have a 2-minute comment period really allows for us to have the time to understand the nuances of what they're asking for. So maybe listening sessions, maybe some other forum, maybe something conducted by the CJCC or Health and Human Services Committee. But what I'd like to do is invite staff to come up with some ideas. And in particular, I would like the county to think about putting an equity lens on this conversation. And that means reaching out to the communities that are most affected by these issues and to hear what their concerns are. So I'm proposing at least 2 outcomes. And one of those would be to incorporate these requests in future board decision making. In the past, members of this board have said that the county should only do what is mandated by the state in terms of health and human services. And they've said that tax expenditures of tax levy money on these services isn't acceptable. And so I want all commissioners to have their say, but I also want to hear the concerns of the public. And the second goal is going to be to educate our residents about what our ongoing efforts currently are, because a lot of people who have reached out to me, they really are not aware of some of the work that the CJCC is doing. And so I think maybe we do some education to make sure people know about the work we've been doing to keep people out of jail and help folks to recover. And the last thing is that I'm hopeful that if we adopt a plan to move forward on the jail, that we are able to include these voices to the extent possible in the design considerations that are left. So whether that is the programming, and what is actually meant by programming, I think really means by the additional services and things like GED and other services that we're going to offer people who are incarcerated, but also in conversations about what to do about juvenile beds and the many other concerns that we heard about today. So I guess what I'm asking for is if we have to have another conversation about this, to formally ask staff to think about how we might take care of some of the things I'm talking about.
Question about this item.
I really didn't get a very clear
Directive.
I heard a lot of discussion, but I don't know if there's a motion put forward in that, or if we're discussing the motion.
I think we're just still in a discussion phase.
I guess from the standpoint of Commissioner Meyer used the word educating the public, bringing future education. The constituents I've heard from have let me know that they feel like the county board is not listening to them. So I would favor at this point having a public hearing. I feel as though the CJCC has really had the floor for 2 years, and they've even had a couple of community members on that who felt like they were just so outnumbered that they really couldn't participate. And even the other night when we had the forum to give a presentation from the jail committee, it seemed again like our judicial system telling the community what they need. And quite frankly, I feel like we should still be in the phase of listening to the public, and until we take the vote. So I know there's things we're not supposed to discuss, but for Commissioner Meyer, for you to write a letter on what the community should do at this point, a letter to the editor, we should still be listening. We should listen, and then we should vote. And it's clear that you're not open to that process. The process isn't done playing out, and today we might decide on a public hearing, and so I feel like your proposal muddies the water and really doesn't clearly answer the public's concerns. The public wants to be heard. They feel like the CJCC and the committee has had the floor. Now they want to have the floor, and I want to hear them. So I would, at this point, I would turn this into a motion for a future public hearing with respect to the jail size.
Okay, that
That's
is
a motion.
A motion to conduct a public hearing.
All right, so are we saying that my motion is not on the floor? Is Commissioner Jacob offering an amendment to my motion?
I apologize. I didn't hear that you actually made a motion. I thought we were still in discussion.
I heard a long discussion from you, but I didn't hear a motion.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. And I'm sorry, I might have missed the motion, but I didn't hear a motion.
Well, if there is, yeah. So if there's a motion on the floor, I can't make a motion now, so I'll wait until we resolve this one.
Right.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Kavesi.
I believe that Commissioner Jacobs' motion belongs under agenda item 8.3, where we're discussing the jail size. Can you reread the motion again, please?
The motion was to conduct a public hearing to listen to citizens' concerns. In regards
I thought I heard
to
jail. I thought I heard jail size in there.
Yeah, in regards to jail size.
Okay.
And I agree. It's all about timing and where this fits in. And if I can, my 2 cents is I don't disagree with Commissioner Meyer or Commissioner Jacob, but it's timing. Where we put these in place is critical, because we have citizens asking for a public hearing, but yet we have, and we have on our agenda to discuss size, and we have on our agenda to discuss a smaller size, and we have to discuss the recommendation. So it's all about timing of how this plays out. It gets messy. Yes, if we allow the public in, it gets a little messy, but they are asking, and we need to respect that totally. Because I think some of these programs, if for lack of better term, programs or alternatives, will affect the size of a brick and mortar building. So I personally feel we can't decide on the size of the brick and mortar without knowing what the community wants.
Madam
So
Chair.
I second the motion.
Yeah,
I second the
I don't
motion.
need permission from Commissioner Kavesi to make a motion. I
No.
made the motion.
Right.
I made the motion.
Right, and I'll second the motion. And again, the motion was to hold a public hearing. And can I interject prior to any discussion on jail size, or
The next step would be to hold a public hearing.
prior, am I interpreting that to say prior to any vote on jail size?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So is everybody clear on the motion? Is there any more discussion?
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Meyer.
Yeah, so I'm unwilling to have a public hearing that only discusses the size of the jail, because what I'm hearing from people is that there's a lot of services that have that they want to see outside of the jail, and I think that those conversations need to happen regardless. So I also, and to Commissioner Jacobs' point, we have some, there are some situations, and what I really tried to say in my letter to the editor is that there are certain things that I don't feel I can allow happen to the community, things that pose a risk, not just to the community and not just to the people who get arrested and who may be in distress, but also to our police officers. And to allow the jail to close without having a place to do booking, assessment, and holding is dangerous. And at the point where we are with respect to what the Department of Corrections has said to us, if we don't move forward, they will close us and this situation will happen. So our hope is that if we can move forward with a reasonably sized jail, that we can avoid that situation and get an extension. And I hear what people are saying. And I want to be able to address the issues that they're talking about, but it needs to be separated from the choice of the jail, because that alone represents a real serious problem for the community. So I'm not going to be able to support Commissioner Jacobs' proposal.
Madam Chair.
Yeah, Commissioner Kavesi.
Yeah, I still think we're blending agenda items 8.2 and 8.3. Looking at agenda item 8.2, it says we're supposed to be discussing the option of a board discussion on social and criminal justice services. I think that is what the community wants us to do, regardless of the size of the jail. I think this is a key point to anything that we take on going forward, and it's been a key point in the past, and certainly the resources are never enough, but I think that if we do some systems analysis, if we bring together the players, if we look at our resources realistically and where there are gaps, I think we can start to fill in some of those gaps. So I would support a discussion, as agenda item 8.2 says, to discuss social and criminal justice services without adding the complication of the jail size. To me, that's two separate issues, and we have agenda item 8.3 to deal with that. So I can't support this motion right now as it stands. I would like to have community discussion and more input and more gathering of information, as I've described, with, in general, the social and criminal justice services that are available. So thank you very much.
Okay, we have the motion. Any other discussion?
Yeah.
Okay, Commissioner Jacob.
Opening a public hearing does not tell the people what they have to discuss when they come to the podium. If we open a public hearing, they can discuss any facet that they want. So I come from a standpoint of grassroots, comes up the chain, uses the elected officials to advise the government. Clearly, the three city commissioners are coming from a standpoint of, I'm going to write a letter to the editor, I'm going to tell the community this is what they need, and I'm going to bring this to the community. So it's just a difference in the philosophy. So I want to hear what the community has to say. That's what the motion is about.
Madam
I want
Chair.
them to have their time at the table, and that should be prior to us making a decision on the jail size.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Meyer. Yes, Commissioner Meyer.
When we get to board actions, I'd really like to have a conversation about our respectful workplace policy and our guidelines, and about personal attacks on commissioners. Commissioner Jacob may not agree with my ideas, but referring to me as a city commissioner or a liberal or a number of other sort of liberties is not helping our process.
Okay,
Madam Chair.
we can put that as a future thing, but I'll be reminded that we can't talk, the county attorney as advises, we can't kind of have some of those conversations. That's part of the conversation of the open meeting, the alleged open meeting, serial meeting, and collusion topic.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Kavesi.
Yes, what I'm hearing from my constituents is that the board is spending entirely too much time on these kind of tactics where there's name calling and allegations and et cetera. People have rejected that from the federal level, and they want our county board not to be involved in that level of discussion and to pick up on the county business.
Well,
there's nothing wrong with me stating my philosophies.
Right, and respectfully.
Nope, absolutely not. There's absolutely not. You're absolutely right.
That's true, but name calling and allegations are off the page.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Right, but Commissioner Kavesi, I've had numerous constituents say that there's a problem here in the Winona County Board, and again, the allegations are
That's a discussion for future time. Thank you.
right. But you're trying to stifle discussion.
No, I'm trying
anyway,
to point out that we need to
let's
be
go
on the
back to the
business.
motion. The motion is to hold a public hearing in regards to citizen requests and to
Jail size.
to a jail size and programs. I'll call the question. We'll vote. I'll call voice. What's the term I want?
Roll call.
Roll call vote. I'm sorry. Roll call vote.
I would like to point
yes.
out one thing. The original discussion included a timing to do it before any vote on the jail. So
right.
That was a key part, and you didn't mention
yes. Yes. A key part.
Can you repeat that? I didn't hear that.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, you
well, a part of the we had included in the motion, the discussion needed to be prior to a final or to a vote on the jail size, the brick and mortar size. Okay, is everybody clear on the motion?
Yes.
All right, roll call vote. Commissioner Meyer?
Meyer votes nay.
Commissioner Kavesi?
Commissioner Kavesi votes nay.
Commissioner Olson?
Olson, nay.
Commissioner Jacob?
Jacob, aye.
And Ward, aye. So the motion fails. 3-2. All
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Meyer.
Okay, back to my original request. As a motion, I'd like for us at the next board meeting to have further conversation about the possibilities, not necessarily a public hearing, but the possibility of gathering more public input about alternatives to incarceration and what public services those might be involved.
Okay,
And to help.
Is that a motion?
Yes, this is a motion.
Okay. Do we have a second to the motion?
I'll second it for the purposes of discussion.
Okay, motion by Meyer, seconded by Olson. Discussion. Commissioner Olson, did you have discussion?
I guess I'm not, I'd like a little bit more clarity of what your motion would involve.
Madam Chair?
Commissioner Meyer.
Yeah, so I am not an expert on gathering public input, but this is something that planners and our staff are trained to do. So my request would really be to ask them to come back with some proposals for how we might gather this data. Would the CJCC conduct some hearing sessions? Would the Health and Human Services Advisory Committee do that? And can we then take that feedback and incorporate that in future decisions that we make? And I think back to conversations that we've had. This is before I was elected, and there was a conversation about some services that were being offered to folks, so elderly people who were on the folks who are kind of the most in poverty and they're receiving services, and we would have to pay some additional money for them to keep all of the health insurance options that they had, and the county chose not to do that. But I would really love to have the feedback incorporated as we make decisions about topics like that. The board still needs to make the decision, but I'd like for us to be informed about the programs that our community is asking for.
Okay, further discussion.
Ask a clarifying.
Yeah, Attorney Sonneman.
Being the chair of the CJCC, I just want to ask a clarifying question. Commissioner Meyer, are you asking then at this, if this passes and there's a agenda items scheduled, are you asking that at that meeting then that information be available for the commissioners to make further decisions on directions to go? You know, from community services, from the criminal justice system, from the education system. I mean,
okay, so
what I guess you're asking for.
So to clarify our process, it was my understanding it takes us 3 meetings to actually make the decision, right? that,
I'm asking, what do you
Yeah.
intend to happen at the next meeting?
so the request would be to ask staff to come up with some ideas for collecting public input. Is that enough?
Unfortunately, I don't see this as even a 3-meeting, solution. I mean, just right now to ask staff with holidays and I hate to say it, this Zoom meeting stuff is not conducive to this. You wouldn't have the same discussion if you had people sitting at tables and exchanging ideas. And unfortunately, life is all about timing. And to ask, I go back to this, I love this one gentleman, Scott. I didn't get the last name, but just like he said that when we asked a bunch of professional jail people about jails, there is no solution that doesn't include a jail, and usually a very large brick and mortar jail. My experience with other counties around the state of Minnesota.
So I'm not
I don't
asking
know
for
what we
the,
can accomplish in 3 short,
I am not asking for the feedback at next meeting. I'm asking for the ideas to gather the feedback.
how to
at the
gather the
next-
feedback.
Yeah.
Well, we
And I
shut
would
down
ass-
public hearing.
And I would assume that feedback would be gathered over the course of, depending on when we get into the conversation about the jail, we're going to talk about juvenile beds. There's potentially a future process. And so I would want them to be involved in that process and for us to be informed by their input in that process. But I see that happening over the next year or longer.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Jacob.
What I heard from the public in the public comment period this morning was very concisely over and over again for a public hearing. We voted that down, and here's the alternative we're going to give you instead of what you're asking for. So it just feels like disingenuous and not what the public's asking for.
Not listening.
We're not listening. I don't support it.
Okay. Any further discussion? All right, we have the motion by Commissioner Meyer, second by Commissioner Olson, to put on a future agenda a discussion as to how to gather, am I paraphrasing this right? How to gather the input for social and criminal justice services?
Yep.
Everybody clear on the motion? Okay, we'll do a roll call vote. Commissioner Meyer?
Meyer votes aye.
Commissioner Kavesi?
Kavesi votes aye.
Commissioner Olson?
Olson, aye.
Commissioner Jacob?
Jacob, nay.
Again, timing is everything. Are we putting this off? I am disappointed that we did not approve a public hearing as we had numerous requests this morning. I don't disagree that the information needs to be gathered, but timing over the next year is just unacceptable, because I strongly feel we'll be voting on brick and mortar size and not really taking this into consideration. So I'm going to vote nay. So it passes 3-2. All right. So is staff clear on what is being asked of them?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. 8.3, discuss options of a smaller jail facility. Commissioner Jacob, I think you brought that one.
Well, sure. In the last 12 months since COVID has come into the picture, I've asked time and time again for responses really from the entire CJCC, the whole jail advisory committee, on isn't that proof that we can certainly operate with far less inmates in our jail? And I haven't really gotten an answer that satisfies that question. So that brings me to, why are we discussing? And initially, the proposal brought forward by the jail advisory committee was for 98 or close to 100 bed facility. And you and I, Marcia Ward, asked for any smaller alternative, and we got the 78, 80 bed facility on the agenda to at least be looked at. And sure enough, when they looked at them, the smaller one is what they advised. So that tells me that there should be a further comparison between the 78 and something smaller yet, because the larger one didn't, once they reviewed things, the larger one didn't make sense. So yeah, I mean, for a number of reasons. And also, I don't think we should take the position that our jail is going to close, and therefore it's a hazard to the community that if we don't get this done on this timeline, we do have other options. We can transport elsewhere, and it would be foolish to make a $22 million mistake to try to save 6 months. So, or 6 months or a year. I'd like, I guess we've already voted that we're not going to allow the public to have a public hearing on size of the jail. I don't know if there's any other motion that we could bring forward on that. But maybe someone else got some thoughts on the size of the jail.
Any other discussion?
Madam Chair?
Commissioner Kavesi.
Yes, thank you. I've been looking for information that Commissioner Jacob was talking about on all of the jails, all of the prisons. Everybody has cut back on holding people because of COVID. So it's a little too close now to show any differences. One of the things that Ben Klinger has been collecting and sharing with the emergency committee is the number of calls that, and by categories, whether they're domestic violence, behavioral considerations, and that kind of thing. So, and he's comparing 2020 with 2019. And as you can guess, it fluctuates. At times, our current number of behavioral consideration kinds of calls and domestic violence calls are higher than 2019, and at times they're lower. So there's really nothing quite available in our local data. In the answers to the form, I did see reference to one study that was done in Cook County, and it actually showed that when people were released on recognizance and with without bail considerations, that the same people committed new crimes and also violent crimes, and those crimes increased by as much as 45%, I believe, and 30% for the violent crimes. So there is some information available. We don't know locally. It's a little too close to happening because it's still happening. We also don't know if in the future we will be allowed to use some of these options that are being used now, because some of them are considered emergency options. So whatever is happening under COVID to reduce the jail size is a fact, but I think our regular data and our average daily population, those have been very stable in the low 50s, and that's gone down dramatically since CJCC was instituted. So I think we have to look at the data that we have on hand and that we can interpret, and not make any speculations about continuing the COVID options, because we don't know if we can continue them, and we're not sure if it has a community effect or not. So thank you very much.
Any other discussion?
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Meyer.
Yeah, so I've asked this question myself, but I think more than my answer, it might be useful to hear what our Jail Administrator Buswell or what Chief Deputy Jeff Mueller, or perhaps, I don't know if the sheriff's on, but maybe they could talk to us a little bit about the trade-offs that have been made during this time period of COVID, and really because of how old and outdated our facility is, that it doesn't have negative air pressure, that it doesn't have safety, that even in best of times, is not ADA compliant. And it doesn't have fire safety, but particularly in the time of COVID, it simply cannot provide safety for inmates. So they have been forced to make difficult choices. I see Sheriff Ganrud is on. Maybe he would like to share with us.
Sheriff Ganrud, you got anything to add to the conversation?
Yeah, I would just like to say, you know, I say it all the time. I've been in law enforcement for a long, long time, and administration for the last 22 years. And it's always been my philosophy and that of my predecessor. Public safety is our biggest issue. I have said for all the time I've been in the administration that my deputies and I need to be proactive rather than reactive. I've always said, if at all possible, you go out to the scene and you talk to the people face to face. COVID came along, and the philosophy for the last 10 months has dramatically changed at the sheriff's office. I am telling my deputies to be reactive. Don't go out and stop every car that has a headlight out or a tail light out. And that's, again, for health safety rather than public safety. You know, when you stop a number of cars, you're going to come across somebody that has a warrant for their arrest. You're going to come across somebody that has drugs in their car. You're going to come across a number of things that we need to take action on. We have not been doing that. We backed off on what I want done. And then we started to have the numbers go way down. We talked to the deputies and kind of pulled back the reins and said, you can now start arresting people on the misdemeanor warrants. Again, across the state, there was a judge's order that we didn't have to enforce misdemeanor warrants and some gross misdemeanor charges. So people that would have been coming to jail any other year were not. We're simply giving them a court date. Some people have obviously a problem with authority. You give them a court date, and now we're starting to see the repercussions of that because the people we're given the court date aren't showing up for their court hearing. Now there's another warrant. We're back out looking for the same people again. The victims of crime are not getting, we are not victim orientated right now. We should be holding people accountable, and sad to say that we need to get back in that. Right now, the philosophy or my stance is health safety, the safety of my staff, the safety of the inmates that we have here. We're doing a number of things trying to keep everyone safe, along with public safety.
Thank you. Thank you. Commissioner Jacob.
Sure. So a couple other pieces are, I know we talk a lot about transportation, but at $55 to $60 that we're paying presently to house inmates elsewhere, we can't do that for that cheap here, building our own facility. So there's a financial savings there. Also, it utilizes existing facilities already overbuilt and underutilized. We've learned about alternative ways to monitor people other than having to have them held in a cell. We've learned that teleconferencing reduces the need for transportation. These are all things that COVID has really put a light on in the last 12 months, and we're just disregarding all that. And probably one of the biggest pieces of advice that I've gotten from anyone was Commissioner Rich Hall from Wabasha, who said, you know, he believed everything that came from his advisory committee, and he said really there was no other position that they were going to take than Wabasha needed to build a large jail that sits there largely empty, and they've actually had to have discussions about closing down. He said, in hindsight, he said, I wish I had listened and represented the people instead of my judicial system. And he's let me know that one of his pieces that he feels the worst about is that his name is on that plaque in that jail. He said he does not feel good about that. I think there's a lot to be learned from Wabasha. This board is not, I feel, not listening to it. I'm going to make a motion for this board to consider reviewing a 40-bed facility as it would compare to an 80-bed facility.
Madam Chair, is there already a motion on the floor?
No,
Okay,
not that I recognized.
okay.
So we have a motion by Commissioner Jacob to consider the alternative of a 40-bed jail
As it compares to an 80-bed.
as compared to an 80-bed jail. And I will second that for discussion.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Commissioner Kavesi.
Yes, considering that our average daily population is in the low 50s, a 40-bed jail doesn't mean we can hold 40 people. It means we would be able to hold less. And if we have an average day, I'm concerned about the data that we have fitting into a 40-bed jail.
Yeah, part of my philosophy is, as Commissioner Meyer pointed out, we do need a jail. We need a place for law enforcement to bring these people in, book them. But if they're going to be there for any amount of time, it's not cost prohibitive for us to outsource anyone who's going to be in our facility for more than a day or two. That would be far more cost effective than building a facility that we would never have to potentially transport out for. And if you look at our numbers from the last 12 months, a 40-bed facility, we probably wouldn't be transporting out at all. So it depends. Are we trying to make a business out of building a large jail and filling it, or are we trying to utilize the facilities that are around us and make most efficient use of what we have?
Madam Chair?
Commissioner Kavesi.
Yeah, given that we've just had huge public input regarding alternatives and programs and all of that, none of those transfer when we move somebody into another county because they're following their county programs and policies. So I'm concerned about the human cost. I don't believe that the transportation costs would be less. I believe they would be more. And that I'm following the data from the jail advisory study. But I'm also concerned about the human costs in terms of taking people who may be in distress out of their home community, transporting them, different hours to come back and forth for hearings and things like that. And also not addressing the basic issues of perhaps why they find themselves in this position, and addressing it with resources that are available in our community. So I'm concerned about those kinds of issues with people traveling back and forth. I would like our sheriff or our jail administrator or somebody to comment on the 40-bed option size. Can you give us some numbers? How many people would we be able to hold? And what does that do to our average daily population numbers? So thank you. Is it possible we can have some comments from the staff?
I don't know if we're going to get, that's really putting them on because this is the first time we've put this out there. I don't know if they have
I believe they've already unmuted themselves.
Yeah, I think they can calculate the numbers.
From the professional jail people then.
Go ahead, Steve. Hi, well, this is Steve Boswell, the jail administrator. Talking about a 40-bed, it really depends, number one, how you design the facility. So we have to really go back to even my presentation I made on Monday. We have to still be able to properly separate and classify everybody that comes into the facility. So depending on how you build that would depend on how your separation needs for the difference in between building the facility with 40 beds compared to how you're allowed to occupy it. The occupancy level is either typically going to be 80, 85, or 90. So if you take that 40 with simple math, if you're at 80% capacity and your occupational capacity is going to be at 80% of that because it's more of a linear style and and it's not allowed with good good visual line of sights. That means you're down.
Now you're presuming a whole different design, and that's not what we asked.
No. I'm just saying it all depends on how this is built. So the design that we actually went with the current design is, number one, is just an option. It was never this is an absolute, this is what it shall be, this is what it must be. The whole idea is how much we can fit in on the smallest footprint or the square footage. That was 53 cells, 53 individual houses. If you're talking 40, if there's no double bunking, and if you went down to half of that at 20, that means really you're a 20-bed facility. And that means that everybody would have to perfectly classify with each other, get along with each other, and then you really only have 80, 90, or 85% of that 20-bed cell facility. It does get a little bit more complex because there's all these different rules that are out there, and these rules are put into place because of what the public brought up. We completely embrace and completely agree with the public as far as necessary services, having these having all these services available, and CJCC and the jail has reached out to the county board for many years to try to get more programs, and then we were pretty much told that we had to come up with a cost, like where is it a cost savings in the programs. So then we had to go down the avenue about making sure that we could do all this stuff inside of the facility. So with that, the facility design is going to dictate how you can operate it. Number of beds being smaller means that you have less options. I made a comment on every meeting over the last couple of years, because we have had public meetings over the last couple of years about this jail and presentations about the jail and stuff. And each and every time I've made it really clear that a full jail is not a safe jail. We want to take all this stuff into consideration. I appreciate this time today, and I would literally need almost like an hour really to go through that. Would a 40-bed work? My personal opinion, I don't know if this is what people want to hear, but I would say that if we were to go anything less than what we have off the statistics that we've done over the last 24 months would be too small, and we wouldn't be spending the right money. You got to remember that there's 26 cells, 26 houses are single. 27 of those 53 are double bunked. So this isn't an 80-bed huge monster. We have 83 current beds inside of the facility now. And the reason that we were shut down is we don't have that flexibility inside of the institution to keep, especially the people, the detainees, safe inside that institution. Because there's such a mixed amount of people coming into the facility, whether they have post-traumatic stress disorder, as Daryl, our social worker that worked for the county, worked for the school district, and I really honestly feel that we're blessed having them come into the jail, knows that this isn't necessarily the best place either for them. We're not a institution, as he said, to really do treatment. But we are an institution that has been stabilizing people, allowing them to come back out into the community or get them into that treatment, because those beds are not available. We would need a lot of assistance from the federal government. We need a ton of assistance from the state, which we reached out to, as I indicated in my presentation, from Al Franken. Criminal Justice Coordinating Council has not just sat back only trying to do stuff only for the jail. We've reached out to the Senate and money to try to get these services into this community, but not just Winona, the whole 6th district, meaning 13 counties down in the southeast area. And it started with a crisis response team that we were able to get. Those kind of things help.
I'm sorry, I don't mean, I know you could go on. I know you could go on for hours. But I don't think it's fair that we're asking you, would a 40-bed at, this spur of the moment, work and such. So I appreciate your comments, and stay tuned. We'll be asking you for more. Do your homework, and I know we'll be asking for more input.
Excuse me, Commissioner Ward.
Yes.
I don't really understand why Commissioner Jacob just keeps throwing numbers out there and said, we'll build around my numbers. We've had a whole lot of research put into this. You know, the transport costs more, but Steve says it doesn't, because he doesn't believe it does. But the report indicates it does cost more. Can inmates attend court over Zoom? Yes, they can, but they also can choose to be in person because that's their right. So their defense department locally, public defenders, they choose to meet with their clients personally because they feel that's the best way to serve their clients. So although all the opportunities are out there to make it a more efficient system, the rights are still out there for individuals to participate in the system that serves them. You know, if you want to just throw out a number of beds and say we'll build around that, make it work, and then I don't, instead of saying here's our needs and we're going to build a system to suit our needs, then you're doing it backwards, in my opinion. So I won't support a 40-bed facility. Thank you.
Okay, any other discussion? Commissioner Jacob.
Sure. Well, my idea is to bring both sides of the issue to the table. I wouldn't expect to hear the judicial system from Winona County come up with anything other than what they thought would be really the very best going forward. This is what I would expect. My philosophy is I want the judicial system to listen to what the community has said to me. They feel we're overspending. They feel we're overbuilding. They feel that there's perfect examples of neighboring counties that have made the same mistake. I've got neighboring commissioners. These people have all been silenced. I've asked to have a public hearing, made clear not going to happen. I think this board is just going to vote on it, and that's what's going to happen. I'm trying to show that there is another side other than the side that our judicial system has brought to the community. The community has felt, I would say, they've had their voice taken from them. They want to have a voice, and we're not hearing it. So I'm trying to put out different options to try to get an opportunity for them to come and say, here's what we want you to hear. But instead, we're just we have a presentation the other Monday night, and again, we're going to be done we're going to run from 7 to 8:30, and we're going to give the public 20 minutes of time to interact. And 8:30, we're still telling them our side, and we're not listening to their side. So I'm frustrated, and those are my reasonings for wanting to look at a different size. Greg has
Greg,
Commissioner Wood.
Commissioner Olson, yeah, go ahead.
You know, through the good people and well-meaning people that have participated and give some passionate testimony, I've heard the same sentiment. I got a million postcards sitting on my table with the same sentiment. Don't build a bigger jail. I just heard our jail administrator, Buswell, say this is actually going to be a smaller jail. So we are building a smaller jail. We're also designing it to be more functional and to include programming. So we're addressing many of the concerns. We're not building a bigger jail. Yes, it's more expensive than it was 30 years ago because costs go up. And the design criteria is an expensive building to build. So I don't believe we're building an oversized jail. I think that the proposal is a good proposal. It's a right size facility. Thank you.
Okay.
Madam Chair.
Meyer.
Yeah, just a couple quick points. So someone during the public comment period really questioned the idea of how much it would cost to run the jail. And this is pertinent to Commissioner Jacobs' comments and repeating the sentiments of Rich Hall, who's a commissioner in another county. What the jail study showed is that which is more labor intensive ends up costing more. The transportation is more labor intensive. So that even though, and this is what the study showed, the brick and mortar might cost more initially, it actually costs less to run in the long run. So in terms of looking at cost and suggesting that it's cheaper to house inmates elsewhere, we know that that's not really true. And I don't want to repeat the things that Commissioner Kavesi said, so.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Commissioner Kavesi.
Yeah, I would also like, this is blending the next agenda item in terms of the jail option, but on the jail design and construction committee, we did consider other options. We considered more closer to a 98-bed facility with also juvenile holding cells, not program area, well, not treatment necessarily, but holding cells, which reduces our costs and our also human costs of transporting juveniles around the state. And also we can, that bigger option included renovation of the current law enforcement center with to allow for a more modern dispatch center to adjust to the Winona Police Department needs and things like that. We put many of those on a second concern and adjusted the number of beds downward. So to say this is the best option that our local staff have come up with, the 80-bed option, that already is a compromise. So if we want to go to the best option, we're looking at a different option. This one is a compromise, and that's what I have to say about this. That's also perhaps conversation for our next agenda item, but I do not believe a 40-bed option, which actually, I'm not sure if that's 20 cells. Anyway, I'm not sure a 40-bed option would meet the needs for programming or for our current level of population.
Okay, any other discussion? All right, I get my 2 cents. I would agree to at least discuss and look at the alternatives, something smaller, because the brick and mortar is only part of this system. And we're really concentrating on the size of brick and mortar. And you will eventually pay for brick and mortar, but by the time it gets paid for, it'll be non-compliant again. I guarantee you. The Department of Corrections, you know, if it's a 20, 30-year facility, we can guarantee that it will be non-compliant again. That's just a given. So it's only one part of the system. But I've always said, in the way I do my personal business and my thinking in the government, is that we should kind of set a budget. What's the budget for the criminal element of our responsibilities? So if I spend $20 million on brick and mortar, and I ask the taxpayers to pay that, I agree with the people who are weighing in that we need more alternatives and everything. Where's my money to pay for those programs? I'm not naive enough to know that those don't cost significant dollars, but is it dollars better spent? And if you look at the in between the lines on these proposals, is that this is just this 80-bed is only phase 1. We're looking going down the line of adding sheriff and police facilities, of possibly juvenile, possibly more, you know, more other things. So watch out, the snowball will get bigger and it will run down the hill. So I always do look out for my taxpayers. So so brick and mortar, if we build the 80, I've been told that we won't add any staff, but how do we add staff to do the things people need through these mental health and social service programs? Well, and it sticks in my mind that our average stay, if you talk about reports, is 10 days. Our average stay in Winona County Jail is 10 days. What can we do in 10 days? Not much, folks, but we have to have maybe things out in the community that correct the habits and patterns of behavior, not just the brick and mortar part of jail. And I would have to ask, I haven't seen, and maybe I missed it, how many people Winona County actually, you know, brings them into the jail, and are they detained? And then what's our percentage that are booked and put in jail versus some alternative? And I refer to the Yellow Line project, which was mentioned earlier too, that Blue Earth County has used. And literally, you know, they use that yellow, I said blue, I mean yellow, and my colors mixed up. yellow line to provide early response and not even book them into the jail, because once you're booked and you cross into the jail, you're part of the system. You got a record, you got more problems for the rest of your life, and to avoid this, but that's going to cost money. So I would prefer to take out of my budget money to do those types of things versus brick and mortar, which just keeps the system going. And like Scott said, you know, no jail study wouldn't promote building a large jail. And the old saying, you build it, they will fill it. So we need staffing to do some of these other things. So if we can build a smaller brick and mortar and allow staffing dollars to go to more preventative things, I think it's better for us. And then, of course, you read in the newspaper, and I'm sure Attorney Sonneman can allude to this, the Hennepin County attorney is changing the rules. I think he has reduced, again, I just read the headlines, I think he has reduced some of the incarceration in Hennepin County, reduced the bail bond issues. And so there's a lot of things going on. And if Hennepin County can do it, then they've got the ear of the legislature, because they're big and they got huge dollars. So if they're, you know, we can maybe tag on to some of the things that they're doing. So the you know, options, you know, jail, hospital, detox, are we fully utilizing that? You know, jails are built for criminals. They're a threat to society. Are a lot of these people a threat to society? Sheriff Gandard says he wants to protect, you know, his staff, the jail, the incarcerated, and the public. So that's very, you know, proactive. But incarceration traps people. And I don't know if we want to set a trap. And again, by just looking at a smaller facility and looking at what some of these things other people are actually doing across the state of Minnesota and the country, and then what some of the programs that people have alluded to. Unfortunately, we haven't gotten real concrete things from the people who have spoke, but they are speaking, and it sounds like some of them are very professional, working in that industry of mental health and care, and we need to tap into them to find out. I always, you know, make no about the committee that started to build the jail, and I referred to it, and I did this public, is Build the Big Jail Committee. And unfortunately, these people that are speaking now weren't put on that committee, and that was probably unfortunate on their part and our part to not have a more diverse committee to start with. As Commissioner Jacobs said, some of the citizens that were on that committee just felt overwhelmed and weren't as effective as I would have hoped they were early on. I know I'm late in the process. I know a lot of work's been done, but this is a major expense for our taxpayers. And is it really going to solve the problem? It's a part of the problem, part of the solution, but I think we need to look at a lot more than just the brick and mortar. And we have to be careful what we build. And we do have short-term solutions. As Commissioner Jacobs said, I've got Houston County Commissioners, Wabasha County Commissioners saying they're willing to be part of our solution and work with us.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Commissioner Meyer.
You've made some great points. May I have an opportunity to respond?
Yes.
I'm grateful that you want to hear from the folks who've spoken and that you want to explore more and include them in the process going forward of additional services. And so I hope that with the previous board action that I suggested, that we'd be able to do that. It's been a struggle to get support, and we finally do have support from the board for the work that the CJCC does. They've had to do their work with grants for a number of years now. And when we've looked at that data, we know that for every dollar that we spend on those kind of programs, we get back $10 to $12 worth of value. So I'm glad that you support those programs. So do I. I want to talk again a little bit about what happens if the jail closes and we don't have an alternative, and the pressure that we're under from the Minnesota Department of Corrections. And so when you speak about the jail having a term limit, a time at which it will be outdated, I am one of my personal passions has to do with climate change and the need for us to move away from fossil fuels. And yet a lot of us drive cars that are powered by gasoline. And so if I were to outlaw gasoline-powered vehicles today, people would be stuck. And so what we need is time to build all those alternatives. because we are one part of a full system, as you mentioned. So it's my hope that when this jail becomes outdated, that you're absolutely right. We don't need it. And I'd like to have us move forward, but I can't allow the current jail to close and not have something in place because of what the consequences of the community are going to be. So I see the goals that a lot of folks are talking about, this idea that we don't need any jail as aspirational, and I hope we can move towards that.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. Any other discussion?
Yeah, sure. Well, you know, one last piece to support my motion is that, along with suggesting all along that we look at a smaller size facility, I've asked to get on the agenda about discussing the budget, which you kind of touched on just a little bit there, Commissioner Ward. In representing not just the judicial system in Winona County, but representing taxpayer, there hasn't been really any discussion about what's appropriate for the taxpayer. How much can the taxpayer afford, and how does that play into it? So, I mean, those are all pieces that I'm looking at when I've said we need something, and I'm in agreement with that. We shouldn't have a zero facility and outsource everything, but I've tried I've taken swings at it, multiple different ways to get this board to perhaps look at the things from the taxpayers' point of view. How much can they afford? I represent those people too, so that's part of why I have the motion on the table.
So, Commissioner Meyer?
I was muted. How could you?
You were muted. I can read lips.
You probably can. I just want to say the thing that I always say when we have this conversation. Again, in 2020, there are only 2 counties in the entire state of Minnesota that have a lower levy percent-wise per capita than the county of Winona. We can afford these programs. And I think people have made it clear that we need to.
Harder when you're in a position where your constituents largely have acres of land, and each acre of land they have gets taxed for this jail, yet we never put one of those acres in jail. So, I mean, that's a little bit of a tough pill to swallow. One farm family puts the same pressure on the jail as one non-farm city family. I know that's offensive to you, Commissioner Meyer, that I use the word farm and city, but the impact to the farm acres, it's harder. It's harder.
I believe that each of us represents about the same number of citizens, and St. Charles is a growing concern, a growing city in our community. So I think that your constituents use these services as well. It's not just the city of Winona.
Don't.
No, but more than 50% of the entire levy comes from the city of Winona.
So why should a farm family who has 500 acres pay more than a city family who has 1 acre in town?
It's the businesses in the city that are paying the majority of our levy.
Farm family gets taxed each acre. That's.
Unfortunately, property taxes aren't per person. They're based on land values, and that's a system that needs to be reformed, but we are not at that level to do that. Okay, we do have a motion. Commissioner Olson.
I just want to, address Commissioner Jacobs' thought that doing something less than what is proposed saves taxpayers money, when the whole jail study has shown that doing less and transporting costs more. Now, you might not believe that, but those are the numbers that are before us. So I will just leave it with that. Thank you.
And I will respond to that. That's exactly what Commissioner Hall brought to my attention. He listened very diligently to all those numbers and voted the way the professional said he should vote, and they're hemorrhaging money every year and they can't afford to operate. So there's more to it than The citizens need to be represented, the citizens need to be heard, the taxpayer needs to be represented, the taxpayer needs to be heard, and I'm here to represent those people too. So those are my pleads for looking at a smaller jail, pleads for looking at the budget of the jail.
And I guess I'll chime in on those numbers. So we have a 300,000, just round figures, $300,000 contract with Houston County. Take 300,000 for the year times 20 years. I'm sorry to say that's only $6 million. We're talking, and then put that much on for transport. That's $12 million. We're talking about building a $20 million brick and mortar. And believe me, it won't be 20. It'll be, I think, you know, closer to 23, 24, 25. By the time we get the toilet paper in the rolls and we open the doors, it'll be up there. And again, I have to say that that's only one part of this whole system. So I do have to disagree with those numbers. And I mean, maybe my math's wrong. I'm old school math.
Your math is wrong because you can't count the $300,000.
Commissioner Ward, I believe your math is right, but you're talking 1/3 or less than 1/3 of our average population. So take your numbers and multiply.
The 300,000 that you're saying we're paying to Houston County, if we build here, it's not free for us to have those inmates here. We can't do it for the $55, $60 a day that they're charging us.
Exactly.
So that money shouldn't even be thrown into the equation.
Yep. So anyway, modern math. Okay, we do have a motion on the table. I think it's time to move that along to look at the option of a 40-bed facility. Is that, did I word that right?
Yeah.
Okay, all
As it
right.
compares to the 80.
As compared to an 80. All right, we'll do a roll call. Commissioner Meyer.
Meyer votes nay.
Commissioner Kavesi.
Commissioner Kavesi votes nay.
Commissioner Olson.
Olson, nay.
Jacob.
Jacob, aye.
And Ward, aye. All right, it fails 3-2. All right. Are we done then with smaller jail 8.3? I think we all need a short break before we go into, and we have guests in the audience, but I think we need to take a short break here. So let's take 5 minutes to gather our thoughts. Okay.
man.
Stuff's all got to play out, so let's do it. Yeah. Established 2 years ago. What's that? I think that was the direction was, or was established a couple years ago.
I love your sweater, Marcia.
Oh, well, thank you.
I have a Scandinavian sweater like that, but my daughter apprehended it. So.
I wish things were black and white. I should really be wearing gray.
I got enough in my hair. I don't need it.
Yeah, we were talking about that. I proudly wear the gray hair my grandmother gave me.
I do too.
My grandmother.
Yeah.
She grayed early in life.
Yeah. In our family as well. So it's like,
At least you guys have hair.
I know.
Could be a lot worse.
Yeah, I don't really have a lot of sympathy for you.
Yeah. My husband would too. Let's see, I think I saw Commissioner Kvesi maybe going to use the.
She in the conference room?
She was, but I met her when I was coming back through.
Ready for their vaccine?
Am I? I don't believe in them. I've never, I don't know. You remember as kids lining up to take the sugar cube for polio?
Yeah.
I mean, that was, I think, in grade school, we had to line up and.
they also gave us a shot.
I think
too,
I got
before
the
they
shot,
sugar.
yeah.
Well, there was the shot and then the sugar.
Was there?
No, I just remember I remember the sugar cube, all of us lining up.
I lived at just the right time where they actually used a gun that went right from arm to arm to arm. No like sterilization between.
Oh, just like
you just
livestock.
went right down the line.
I've got one of those for livestock at home. You just put the big bottle up here and you.
Same needle that went in the last arm goes in your arm.
Yeah.
I went to a parochial school, so we didn't have the same thing. Kind of vaccination. You had to get vaccination, but you have to go to the doctor, right?
Oh, yeah.
So my mom had me slip into the public schools line for the vaccination.
Illegal.
It was for mumps.
All right. Yeah. You rule breaker. It goes way back, huh? Or your mom was, huh?
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah.
Commissioner Kvesi, have you rejoined us? We'll give her a couple more minutes.
Yeah, I don't see her. I don't think she's back yet. And I don't know about Commissioner Olson either because his camera's still up.
Yep.
I'm here.
Okay, you're there.
That's good to know. I forgot your cat's name. Oh, right. Pharaoh. That was what it was. Yeah. So Malcolm is sleeping, or I'd ask him to come out and make a cameo as well.
Are we putting a new roof on?
Yeah, the HHW.
Yeah.
It's been leaking for years, and
Don't
just
build
patched
flat buildings. You gotta
Yeah, I
put a
know.
pitch to
I
them.
know. Yeah.
Remember that, people. We don't do well with flat roof buildings in Minnesota.
Yeah, so we're getting it replaced.
I think Commissioner Kvesi has rejoined us.
Is she? Yeah, Commissioner Kvesi, you back with
I'm
us?
here, yes.
Okay, all right. Okay, we will reconvene. 8.4, committee recommendations. Approved jail design and construction recommended resolution. 8.4. Good morning.
Good morning, commissioners. We've gone a little bit away. I'm Scott Fettig with Klein McCarthy Architects. We were hired to work with the committee and the jail staff in going through and taking the study that you had and turning that into basically a space needs, and working with the jail staff in how you wanted to house, how much single, double bunking we were using, and that nature. And part of that exercise was to develop a 78 and a 98 bed space needs requirements, and then look at the comparison of that. So today, that's our direction, and then to implement that and test that on the site and work out those options. So we're not here as Klein McCarthy to recommend a size or to do anything of that nature, but to give you the factual information so that you can work through those decisions on your side of it. What I can tell you in the difference you saw in the space needs, and I'll try to avoid calling it a space program so we don't get programs conflicted, but the space needs, the difference between the 78 and 98 bed solutions when we had programmed it out was about 5,200 square feet. So that conflates to about 10% of the square footage with a 20% reduction in beds. So just to kind of give you an idea. So it's not, when you start talking about reducing the beds by a certain percentage, it doesn't follow with the rest of the program, because you still have jail administration, you still have programs, you still have food service needs, and those things are set up to the core size. So when we started taking that space needs and developing the options on the site, what we were following was several different key things. We knew the connection to the existing tunnel to get to courts was a necessity. Utilize the existing jail facility and remodel it as much as we could if it made operational and financial sense. So we did some options with that and ended up a different option without using that. We needed to stay within the property line, so we worked back and forth with the DOT and where that property line was set, the setbacks on those. So we did stay within the property lines, no street closures, keep as much of the existing parking as possible, and also, which was mentioned earlier, design this in the most operationally effective manner so that we can keep staffing costs down, and definitely don't have more staff when you open this facility than you do now. So those were the driving characteristics. One of the things that we do as a firm is always in our options is to look for, and I know no one wants to talk about this yet, but if you ever have to expand the facility, what direction would you go and how would you do that? So we don't want to box ourselves in. We want to give you that. That's just a standard of care that we implement. So I mentioned we worked on several different options. So this was page 1 of the executive summary, really looking at the jail addition. It took us down the road. The committee had suggested look at the law enforcement. So option B, jail and LEC rebuild. We had option C, jail addition and LEC expansion. And then where we ended up today is option D with a detached jail. Danielle will go through the layout of that, but we did more than just these. These are 4 main topics, and within that, we had multiple options testing each of those. So I think we had probably about 12 or 13 different options. So you're seeing a lot of different things. Now that included law enforcement, detox, and those types of things. And we also, during that period of time, the commissioners were invited to tour Houston County, so did that in person, and then also virtually tour Chisago and Kanabec County. So again, we wanted the commissioners to see different examples, similar in size, sometimes a little bit larger, but to start looking at things that we really wanted the group to consider to try to reduce the overall space requirements. And those things were really look at the amount of double bunking in the cells. For the cost of adding a bunk, you can double the occupancy. So when you toured Houston County, you saw that they double bunked everything. You're never going to be able to use all of those bunks depending on the classification, but that's a way for the facility to get those numbers up. So we wanted to look at, whether the showers were in the cells or outside of the cells. What does that mean for PREA? What does that mean for inmate safety and the viewing of the inmates? One of the key things was looking at the programs. The state doesn't dictate the programs that you have to have, but if you're having those, they do have some size requirements for those types of things. So, so we wanted to do that. And really what was happening as we went through this and just the philosophy as it was coming through the committee, was starting to get us to a cost point that we felt that the group was starting to get uncomfortable. So we really started taking a hard look at that, and we approached the group and Jail Administrator Buswell particularly and said, you know, we've gotten in this situation before that you design from the space needs, and then you also need to take a look at where your comfort level is in cost and how can those two trade off. So really when we approached it, we just said, okay, it sounds like that Kennebec County had a lot of the features you're looking for. What if we put that layout on the table, went through it room by room, and crossed off anything you don't need? Is there anything missing? So really, that's where this option D came from, was taking a hard look at that and trying to just take, you know, you always hear, let's boil it down from wants to needs. What do we need to have without reducing the amount of program spaces so that that doesn't prohibit you from running different programs inside your facility, and making sure we keep those. So you've heard different numbers on both plans have 7 different classification housing units, the existing versus now. So, but what we do is we have some subunits within the new options, so that does pick up some more classification within those units. The state has stressed that you can put more, you know, any type or classification of inmate in a cell, but you can't necessarily put anybody in a dormitory. So in the new solution, to get more flexibility, is we're looking at more cells than dormitory, and then also looking at more double bunking than what was previously started in the space program. So those are things.
Can I ask you a question? It's a puzzling question to me, because I was part of the push to do the annex. And to my knowledge, it was very successful. We haven't had problems with it. People have used it, and it saved us a lot of money. Why does the Department of Correction, I don't know if you can answer, why won't they allow us anything like that? What's their reasoning? I mean, I can see if we had problems all along, but to my knowledge, we didn't have any problems. It was very successful.
It is. It's a space that meets your needs. Certainly, it has been successful for you. One of the new standards that is in draft format, and we've been working with the state Department of Corrections on that to try to make sure that we're staying up to speed on what they're proposing and trying to give them ideas on where we think they're going too far and make different recommendations or suggestions. But one of the things that they do have that will be in the new standards when those come out is that you can't have any inmate occupied areas more than 3 feet below grade. So what they're essentially doing is taking away anything for inmate housing in basement levels. So that's what they're trying to do. And I think what they're doing, and that is really predicated on more and more of the less natural light and trying to do that. So, but that's where it's coming from.
Those people are out working during the day. They come back there to sleep. It's kind of dark after, you know?
Yeah, and I think everybody that's
I can't
done
buy that argument.
annexes are you know, that have been using lower level, it's been work release. So, but yes, that's certainly, but that's where it's coming from, is that 3 feet below grade is what we're restricted to.
That explains why we couldn't use our existing annex, but why couldn't something be incorporated into an above grade in the new facility for more efficiency?
I don't know that it would improve the efficiency, but you can certainly look at Jail Administrator Buswell and take a look and see, do we have the right mix of jail cells? Could we do more dormitory within that footprint, and take a look at that? So what we were trying to do was really get you that flexibility that Steve was talking about earlier, so that you can move people around, get them in the right classification. So that's, in smaller facilities, that's really, we're basically trying to subdivide that up. So you get multiple classifications within a classification. So basically sub-day rooms within a housing unit. So that's how we're trying to get more and more classifications within that. And that's really where when you look at the the space needs, you start to see that we went from over 50,000 square feet. I've got that number down here. We went from just over 50,000 down to, at a 78 bed facility, down to 80 beds at about 42,000 square feet. So we reduced almost 9,000 square feet off of that. Now, where that came from is more of the double bunking, so it's less space, showers within the cells, which helps us with free-up. So those are things we looked at. It also is a large reduction in the way intake and release was projected to be used with initial appearance beds. So there's less holding cells in those beds at intake in what you're seeing today. So that was reduced down. So that's what we were trying to do, is work with Jail Administrator Buswell and saying, what do we just absolutely have to have that does not prohibit you from running the programs that everybody's been talking about, that you have that flexibility and still keeping those rooms. So we didn't just go through and cut those and reduce those out. So I think that's really where we were trying to get is get you that flexibility, but get this number down for you. We certainly were hearing through the committee that people were uncomfortable with some of the direction that maybe we're looking at too much. So I think that's where it boiled down to, where we just said, you know what, I don't know that any of these options are truly meeting all of the needs. Why don't we just toss out that thinking? Let's start with working it from the other end, start with a Kennebec County, and let's start looking at what we absolutely need to have and see if we can get that moving forward. So that's really kind of that rethinking.
Scott, you might want to explain the goal of the schematic design process versus as we move into the, the actual engineering design and construction design. Right now you're putting out a footprint with various functions. The cell designs and so forth are there, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's what the final product will look like.
Yeah,
so you want to explain that we haven't gone, there are certain things that aren't precluded yet from exploring.
Yes, absolutely. What we're doing is just taking those ideas and showing boxes of space. So we're showing a cell, whether you single or double bunk that, you can still decide. Whether you put sub-day rooms in a housing unit or not, you still can decide that. The placement of the program spaces, you can still decide that. So basically what we wanted to do was set it up. So again, in a cost-effective manner of even construction phasing is build the new jail facility, attach it to the tunnel, and then move all of the inmates into the jail. And then you've got the vacated annex and first floor to do with, it frees it up to use it if you want to use law enforcement expansion, if you wanted to put juvenile there. So it gives you some ideas there of what you could do. But yes, the idea would be we're putting forward that we think in that footprint and that style of how we're doing it, that working with Steve Buswell, is that we believe that we can stay within that footprint and size for the facility, and then we still have the ability to adapt it and modify it within that. If you decided that you wanted to send out all your laundry and you didn't want to do that in-house, you could do that, reduce the square footage. You could certainly do the same thing with food service. So those are all things that through the space needs, those wanted to be in-house and done at the facility and not shipped out. But yes, you still have that flexibility of doing that. And when we went down to, again, I said our standard is always have another way to add on or expand the facility in the future. So even though this is an 80-bed solution, if you decided today that you really want 98, we're not making that decision for you. Danielle will show you that to the south, we can extend the corridor and we can add more jail beds on in the future, or you could do them now. So what we're trying to do is give you that smaller of the two options you were looking at, but give you the way to add that on. If you find your numbers climb or they don't climb, that's what we're trying to do, is give you that flexibility to make the best decision for you and use our experience to do that.
And in reference to your question about the annex, one of the issues with the annex is that because of the small size of our actual cells, the number of cells, we have very few cells actually in the existing jail. the annex, people that go into the annex are classified, there's an overriding of the classification. And the DOC doesn't, it's outside of DOC's compliance. So when the jail administrator classifies someone, maybe they should be a medium security, but because of housing concerns, we don't have the cells, so we have to move them into the annex, for instance, and along with the minimum security, they're classified, they're overridden. They won't allow us to do that in the new jail. So that changes. You can't have a 40-bed annex because we would eliminate, you could only put the minimum security people there, and then you wouldn't have room for anybody else.
It's very easy to make all the rules and regulations when you have nothing monetarily, tied to it.
Yeah, and that's
if it's work for us,
yeah.
Where's our discretion?
Yeah, and that's part of the issue. We do have to comply with the Department of Corrections rules, and in addition, what Scott was talking about is, and we really want to touch on it just a little bit, is the complication of trying to phase all of this on the existing site. I think we haven't really talked about that a lot, but when we started the process, we thought, can we remodel the existing jail? Can we do this? Can we do that? And it really turned out in the end that there were a number of issues with that. Some of the discussions weren't finished yet, in terms of what do you do with the possibility for juveniles, the discussion of it with the city of Winona and what they want to do with their space and possibly expanding wasn't complete yet. And also the fact that when you add those things in, you complicate the process of phasing the construction of the facility, which costs more. And it also it can have an impact on the whole facility, because you have to have people that different places are being used for different things and then reused. So it makes it very complicated to try to actually build the facility.
But now what this option D,
yes,
and you've thrown a $19 million price tag at it, that doesn't include doing anything with the existing.
Right. It includes a few things which we have to we do have to take into consideration the connection of dispatch to the facility, because it controls some of the doors and so forth and locking and things. There's some other mechanical needs that in terms of trying to mesh the facilities, even though this one's being built separately, there's some connections for different things. But it does not include, you're right, it does not include an overhaul of the Winona PD space. It doesn't include an overhaul of the existing jail space, or any other improvements that need to be made to the law enforcement center. And so that would be over that $19 million estimate.
Right. So the 19 is just the new part. It's not any of
right.
that
Pretty much, yeah.
And such.
Yeah.
So yes,
Exactly.
It's a much higher total dollar figure.
Yes, and when we get to that, I'll have Danielle present through the option and how we what that looks like. But then we also have Mark and Johnson that can speak to the cost estimates, because again, they know the construction. They know we've tried to identify all of those soft cost kind of things where you take the construction and generally you end up with 15 to 20% of soft costs, which are soil borings and building permits and furniture and design fees and all of those things. So we worked with the user group trying to identify as many of those as possible. But yes, when you do see the numbers, where you see to be, by county to be determined, there are additional costs to that. So we don't, if you took that construction value and you put, in your case, you got the property. So if you don't add that in, it's probably going to be around 18, 19, 20%. So factor that in when you're looking at these numbers too. I don't want to, I'm not here to bluff you or mislead you. What we're giving you, that bottom line number, is not the bottom line number yet. But it's the estimation of the information we got.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay, I'll have Danielle from our office come up and walk you through that layout.
Good morning, commissioners. I'm Danielle Reed with Clyde McCarthy. And Heidi, would you be able to jump to page 162? I think it's worth noting there's in the packet, we have the floor plan for option D identified. And as Scott mentioned, we've explored this site numerous times. We've determined that the area on the site, based on the fact that the Department of Corrections has added the turning radius for entering the bridge on the southwest corner of the site, prohibits, it reduces the amount of building that we can actually efficiently build there. So this solution is looking at providing a detached jail and not adding on to the existing, really in an effort to minimize the amount of construction and renovation that we need to do to the existing building. And what we did in evaluating the existing building was determine that there are only sprinkler systems in the basement, for example. So at a minimum, if we put jail inside this building, we'd have to add sprinkler systems, for example. And looking at some of the reductions that we needed to look at all the other areas. So at this point, we were trying to reuse the existing building for public contact visitation. So the main entry to the jail, as it sits right now, would remain. So you're not changing that public interaction. You're modifying ADA restrooms, so the yellow area in the existing building is accounting for new public restrooms and visitation. The dispatch area in pink is renovating the existing jail area to provide dispatch and the door controls that Ken mentioned. So we're going to be able to remotely control the doors and the camera system to the new jail facility.
Just so the public is, the orientation to me is so the street coming, the curved street is that 4th
That's
Street?
4th, yeah.
That's 4th Street. So when I look at the map or the diagram, to me, I would like up to be north, but that's not north.
No, that is north.
That is north. Oh yeah, Winona's north. Yeah, okay. Okay, so that is north.
It's slightly rotated 15 or 20 degrees, but yeah, we call it planned north, but yeah.
Okay, so for people to understand, because the existing building is down on the lower part, and
Yes.
where is the existing? Let's see, we got the Memorial Garden there.
So what you see,
It just seems
in the-
backwards to me. It feels backwards.
It does
to
connect
me.
to the tunnel though.
Yes.
Yes, and so
Okay.
what you're seeing on the right side of the page is the existing courthouse. So you can see some of the outline of the courthouse. So then we've got the existing parking lot to the left of that and to the north of the existing facility. So the existing facility is to the left of the courthouse.
Okay,
Does
so
that make sense?
the parking there is the existing one,
Yeah,
not new.
a portion of the existing.
Okay,
And
all
that's
right.
exactly what we're trying to do in this case is try to really maintain what you have, knowing that if we're building on this site, we're going to take a portion of the existing parking lot and displace, in this case, 25 parking spaces. So a part of the discussion, I think, would be in this case looking at alternative parking spaces. So there's an option for surface parking that would accommodate that displacement of 25 parking spaces in this case.
Or we could ask the city to close a street and use that for parking. City commissioners could advocate for the city to close a street for us. That was talked about a long time ago.
What's that?
Closing streets.
Oh.
Previous boards did discuss that. Okay. just
Madam
throwing it
Chair?
out there.
Oh, Madam Chair? Yeah, I think Commissioner Fritz would maybe talk later. It'll be part of this presentation. We got some money from the legislature and it's going to help us out.
Yes.
Administrator Fritz.
Yeah, sorry, what did I say?
Commissioner.
Oh, pardon me. Pardon me.
I don't think he wants that title.
I don't blame him. I don't blame him. Yeah. Administrator Fritz is probably going to talk about some of the money we got from the legislature, which will come in
Right,
handy.
right. Yeah, and Karen and I'll provide some input in regarding the land and so forth.
Okay, all right.
So looking at the design of the jail in this case, as Scott mentioned, we really looked at what could fit and what would suit the needs of the jail staff and the needs of Winona County. And so what we looked at is seeing what things that could be revised in the intake and receiving area, and also having the flexibility of breaking up the housing units to match what you guys currently have. So we're not making any significant changes on how the classifications are broken up, but giving the county flexibility in the housing PUD area. I want to note that in this option, we didn't make any reductions in the programs area. So the green area is identified, and what we had decided in the committee is the same in terms of how many classrooms the facility will have and rec area that inmates would have. Medical services remain the same. The kitchen and support spaces remain similar, as well as maintaining that connection to the existing tunnel, acknowledging that inmates would need to, at some cases, be moved and transferred between the new facility and the existing courthouse. Any questions on option D? I did have in the bullet points, the juvenile detention center is an option, and we did look at, it's not identified in this plan because it would be forced to be on the second level if it were to be considered in this case or looked at in the existing facility. But it is outside of that initial estimate that we looked at. But we do have a space program for that
3.9 million.
Yes.
And you've got space in there for food service and laundry, which you currently don't do. And is that mandated or that's optional?
It is optional.
And I don't know what the square footage of those is.
So I think you're always going to have some need for receiving. Of course, there's going to be supplies that the facility is going to need. But in a kitchen, if the county continued to have meals brought in, you would still need some space for a warming area. So that area would still be needed, but it could be reduced.
Okay. Well, but you've got food service at 1,320 square feet. And what's the cost per square foot of this project? You must have a dollar and cents in mind.
Yes, I think Market and Johnson has it $475 a square foot.
$475 a square foot. Okay, good enough. Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Commissioner Kavesi.
Yeah, I just have a comment. One of the things that the Jail Design Committee did discuss about this particular design was an option that would be sight and sound secure of using some of the beds in one of the units that could possibly be used on a temporary basis for holding juveniles, which is different than a juvenile center for 3.9 million. But it looks like, depending on the count and how many cells are in use and all of that, that there would be some option to have a holding detention option for juveniles, which currently we take people all over just sometimes for overnight, because then we have to go back and pick them up because their hearing needs to be within certain number of hours and all of the regulations that go with that. So there could be a local holding option, which would be more humane also, and would reduce costs. The other comment is occasionally I'm not hearing all of the discussion. So can you repeat the square footage, and can you just speak a little closer to the microphone? Thank you, I appreciate that.
The cost per square foot, is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, I think repeat that. And then wasn't it 80 bed at, I have written down 42,000 square feet?
So the program is identifying what the new construction is. The new construction doesn't account for the areas identified in the existing. So that would be the dispatch area in pink and the area in yellow. So those items are identified in the cost, because there's a less, the cost for renovation is less than the cost of new construction. The new construction, Market and Johnson has identified as $475 a square foot for jail. But the program for the new construction has the new building at 40,281 square feet. questions?
So if we, for presentation purposes, if there aren't any questions for the architect, then we can talk about the JDCC's recommendation and the resolution that's being presented.
Yes. You're not going anywhere, so.
No,
we got-
yeah, I know.
We'll be
I know.
here.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so Karin and I will kind of do this together. So jump in anytime, Karin, you feel that you need to do that. Yeah. The resolution that we have in front of you is pretty straightforward. There's the first item on the resolution is to adopt the jail-only schematic design.
So what page are you on?
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm on page 266.
Hold on. Please.
So, okay, so it's the jail-only schematic design option D for an 80 classified bed facility. And the recommendation is to move forward with the construction of the jail-only building. By this, we talked about earlier the difference between the schematic design process and then the actual development of the next step in engineering and construction and plans and bids and all that kind of stuff. And that's basically what this recommendation would be authorizing staff to do. The second item is direct the staff, county staff, to negotiate the purchase of additional land for parking. If you'll notice, this takes up 25 parking spaces we already have, or that we have now. It's parking has been tight on that all around the county buildings. We have been pursuing demolition of the monument building in order to pick up some additional parking, and the recommendation in the resolution is to discuss the possibility of expanding that parking to the area, the other buildings that are there as well. So that would require the board to allow us to negotiate with the existing property owners to see if we could possibly pick up those properties for land for parking. One of the things that was mentioned earlier was the money we got from the state. The state provided $750,000 for land purchase related to the jail. The state, the piece of property we're buying from MnDOT was $455,000. And so the remaining balance, our proposal is to help offset the cost of that additional parking, next to the kitty corner from the existing site. There's a small diagram in the packet that shows kind of how that might be laid out. It's conceptual. We'll have to work with those property owners to see if we can come to some agreement. And then also our own property there, which is the monument building, which was part of the space needs study, or I'm sorry, space consolidation study before. We're working on moving our storage out of there for the dive rescue. And that looks like I'll be able to bring something to the county board in the next month or so to lease some space elsewhere. That'll allow us to reduce or eliminate the monument building and then have that available parking. So it's kind of a work in progress, but we do need additional parking. Someday, Fastenal will finish their building across the street here, and COVID hopefully will be a thing of the past. And parking is a premium prior to that, and it'll probably still be a premium after that. Even if we thought that our number of people working at home might continue higher than we did in the past, we're still going to need parking in this area, and especially with the impact of the Fastenal building. Parking is going to be, on-street parking is going to be a premium, so we need some of our own dedicated parking. So the number three, and stop me and ask questions. The JDCC we have a recommendation to continue discussing the juvenile holding facility. And this is really more, at this point, it's a goal. We have a problem in that we send out children to other facilities when they need to be held more than 24 hours. The new facility won't change that. We still can only hold children for juveniles for 24 hours. It seems like it would make more sense to have those juveniles held locally in a safe environment while they transition to possibly back to their parents or whatever the situation is. So that's really the goal. How we get there hasn't been decided, hasn't been really discussed. I think there was some misinformation in terms of talking about a juvenile facility. We have talked to the DOC on what the requirements would be. We talked about how that could possibly fit into the jail plan in kind of a traditional sense. But that's as far as we got, and we decided that that's something we really need more discussion about, and that's why we paired that off. And that seems to fit right in with the discussions that took place today. There is a concern there on how juveniles are handled, but we don't have a solution yet, and I think that's something that input from the community would be highly valuable.
Yeah, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Meyer.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I would like to add the phrase, perhaps directs the JDCC to conduct further study, which includes a public input process, and make recommendations regarding the need for juvenile holding facility.
Okay.
Well, and talking with the neighborhood, I mean, this is a regional issue.
Yeah, I agree.
If any discussion needs to be held regionally about juveniles, and we have to be very careful. Why did Olmsted County close theirs? I have some insight there. I've talked to some people. I've talked to a couple people from staff of Olmsted County, and they said be very careful what you wish for when you consider
Madam Chair, would you be interested in having a phrase added as well that includes regional exploration?
Yeah, I think so. I think I'd feel better about that.
Number 4 is really to basically authorize us to continue working with the city of Winona to determine what space they need for the Winona Police Department, to see if it's feasible to provide that space and how we might accommodate them. They did indicate earlier that they'd be interested in expanding their footprint. They're tight for space now, and so it's a discussion I think we need to have. We have that the old jail space and the old annex space will be available, so we can look at possible reuse of that, or we can look at other options that are available. But it's something we need to continue to look at and move forward and have discussions with the city. But it's not something that any conclusion has come to at this point, other than a few informational sessions to figure out what might be possible.
Before you get too much
farther, okay, go ahead.
When you brought up about the monument building,
yeah,
which number is that under? I'm not seeing it.
I'm sorry, it's under 2. Yeah, direct county staff to negotiate the purchase of additional land for parking. So the idea would be, there's 2 parts to it. One is the monument building, which you already own, and which you've already made plans to move the dive rescue and equipment and so forth out of there. Yeah. And then the other part is there's 2 other buildings next to the monument building that, in order to pick up enough parking to offset what we have, with this plan, we want to discuss with them the possibility of purchasing those properties and moving forward.
I guess the part I'm struggling with is I agree with a lot of those phases, but this is all one package, and in order for me to vote for those, I have to vote for the jail, right?
Okay. Well, you can parse the resolution. I mean, that's a process question. We intended to just provide the recommendations to the committee in a form that could be passed. But if you want to, change that around for the board's purposes, that's fine.
Because the facility is part of it, I can't.
Yeah. No,
I can't support those things that I support.
Yeah, I'll let the chair figure out how to.
On each number of the resolution.
Yeah. Yeah, you can vote on the number. Yeah, take turns. And then let's see. Oh, the last part is working with the staff. The architect and construction manager to figure out the adaptive reuse of the existing jail and annex, which really ties into these other issues as well. It's just kind of supporting that and making it clear that we're going to look at the facility and see what can be done with it, and if it meets the needs of the other kind of things we have going, which is talking to the city of Winona and possibly looking at a safe space for juveniles and what that might intend, or other services as well.
Yeah, I mean, the other services could include what doesn't fit into the programming space of the replacement jail. We can also look at the law enforcement center being used for other programs, such as what we've developed over the last 13 years with reentry and prevention and early intervention.
Right, and so there's still work that needs to be done on the jail or the existing LEC facility on what might the options be in the future. One of the things that we've talked about with the maintenance staff in the past or the maintenance in the past is we have a building out here that takes up parking, but we only need about a third of that space. It's a building that was built in 3 different phases. It houses a bunch of equipment, but most of it's empty. And really, we only need about 2,500 square feet. We could gather some additional parking spaces. This was also in the space consolidation study. We could gather additional parking spaces by tearing that building down and possibly reusing maybe the old Sally Port or something over on the other building for storage of our skid steer and plow equipment and stuff like that. So there's some options. We want to kind of look at it in a holistic way, and rather than bog down the jail proper, we've kind of looked at asking the county board if we can continue to look at those things. And again, nothing's been in stone. It's just a matter of we want to make you aware, full disclosure, that we need to look at these.
Right, and with a significant price tag.
I
I
think-
understand remodeling
Yeah.
tends to cost, and I got 3 experts out in the audience. Okay, so you've told me 475 square feet per new construction. Yeah, $475 per square foot for new construction. You must have in your wealth of knowledge what it costs to remodel something. It's probably, well, you tell me. Do you know?
Well, keep in mind that as far as the Winona, the city of Winona's needs, they're obviously a partner with us, and there'd be some participation that we would expect in that discussion about because they do pay us rent, but obviously when you change the space or add more space, all of that's negotiable. So
they get to pay twice.
Yeah, they're different parts of it. It's not all of the county, and in the end, it may be, well, we're just going to use this particular part for storage and this for, we just don't know. We just want the authorization to be able to look at it.
Tyler from Market Johnson should be on the line, so he can answer any of the construction dollars. Typically on our side of it, we try to stay out of it, but it's usually about 70-75% of the cost of
new. Okay, that's good. Yeah, that's good enough.
Yeah. So again, that's really the JDCC's recommendation here in these 5 different items. And if the county board wants to separate them out and vote on them one by one, that's fine.
Madam Chair?
Commissioner Meyer?
Thank you. I had a conversation with the county attorney last week, and it was really about this question of how to involve and gather more public input. And so the question is, I understood at that time, is it possible, is the programming space fixed at this point, or is it possible to gather input from the public about what services to provide?
And the answer is?
Well, the programming space is just blocked out right now.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, that assumes some things like medical services, social worker, nurse, different things. I think that and if I think Steve Buzzo would tell you that there is some flexibility there. It really depends on what you're talking about adding. I think there's probably more flexibility in the old annex or in the old jail repurposed, and that would be something we could look at as well. So I think the schematic design lays out the minimum basically of what we need to provide those social services, psychiatric services. It's basically space for those people to interact with the inmates and set up shop and have their offices and so forth. But it isn't defined at this point. We do know that some things have to be included in there.
And if I can just jump on,
Sure.
I think what I was also referring to, Commissioner Meyer, was in our discussions in the jail design and construction committee, some of us have talked about making sure that there is space for like the jail intake worker who does that first screening on mental health and on, really kind of a overall assessment. And then also potentially space for our treatment court. We're also looking at family dependency treatment court, which really is out of the jail, so that's more separate. But we've got some staffing that could fit into a jail, or because we put this resolution or proposing this resolution this way, to look at the law enforcement center now has space. If the sorry, I'm going to say court commission, I'll get to the board in a minute here. Okay, the county board, if the county board adopts this jail only design to move forward, we would have then that second, what is it, number 5, to look at the best adaptive use of the law enforcement center space.
And based on the actions of the board today, it seems like that process would have to be informed by whatever public input and whatever forum, you know, we use to get that information. So it wouldn't be a separate process. And I think, you know, you already amended item number 2, I believe, or no, number 3.
3, yeah. I guess I would ask if we could amend 5 and just include the same phrase.
That would make total sense. We're trying to bring all this together for the board. And
sorry to
yeah, no, go ahead.
Looking at it from a system approach, and that's what we've been doing with CJCC for years. I mean, we have to look at it system-wide and be strategic about it. We can't just plod along, and that's what really this resolution is giving that opportunity for these various inputs, various ideas to come to fruition, but be thought of together collectively, rather than just, okay, we're going to build this now, and then sometime down the road we'll build another. And it's, I mean, it is looking at the space, the whole, if you want to call it, area around the courthouse, the jail, or excuse me, the law enforcement center. So being strategic in our purpose.
So I feel like maybe the cart's getting ahead of the horse. What I remember specifically coming to us originally was the jail is being downgraded. That issue needs to be solved. The rest of this stuff, I don't really remember the board having specific discussions. It's going a lot farther than what we're just going to fix the problem so we can keep that open. And these all seem like individual discussions on their own to all be lumped together in one resolution. I can understand where it would be convenient for the judicial system to want to work on all these pieces at once, but it's going a lot farther than this. A lot of this is just kind of like news to me. I do agree with we need more space, and the parking, that seems like a smart move for us into the future. But beyond that, these seem like there's more lumped into this than what I expected to see in the resolution. I expected to see the facility.
Well, we're not asking to spend money on items number, what is it, 2 through 6. It's more that there does.
Yeah, but it'll be looked at as an approval to move ahead with plans.
And you know,
Madam Chair,
going back to our not voting to have a public hearing. Now there is a lot of new information in here, and actually I've been part of this. I think it was the jail design construction committee, and a lot of this is new to me. And this came out late Thursday night. I mean, and so this public has not had an opportunity to look at this, except, you know, from Thursday night on. And we had a lot of people on our speaking list that I think are integrally want to look at this and have the opportunity to comment on it. I don't feel comfortable taking a vote on any of this today. This is way too much information to make a decision today, in my opinion. Commissioner Kavesi, sorry, I had to get that out.
Yeah, I was just going to say, going back to our original resolution and our acceptance of the jail advisory committee report, there are 1, 2, 3, 4. There's at least 5 recommendations that are part of the jail report, jail advisory committee, part of their recommendations to maintain and continue to support, sustain, and develop new programs that reduce recidivism. And it also talks about doing regional studies for juvenile detention. So these additional points on our resolution today are not really new. We had adopted those when we adopted the Jail Advisory Committee study, that they be looked at, not that they be resolved, and they're not resolved today. We're just saying we're going to continue to look at them, and we're being a little bit more descriptive on how we're going to look at them, what space we might be able to use. So we've made progress on those recommendations, but not, they're not new.
I think Greg was trying to talk.
Yeah, Greg, Commissioner Olson?
I think I sent you the right one. I don't know why it's not showing.
Hold on, we're getting some.
No, I'm fine.
Oh, okay. No, somebody was speaking and we don't know who that was. Did somebody, was that a staff member?
Madam Chair, Chair,
Was
someone,
that a staff?
no, someone who has named themselves concerned was unmuted and I think was trying to speak.
Okay, all right. I didn't know if it was somebody from staff in another.
I don't think so.
Okay.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Commissioner Meyer.
Thanks. So I actually, the design committee meetings are recorded and they were made available on YouTube, and I actually watched some of them. And so none of the stuff that is here is a surprise to me. And I would second what Commissioner Kavesi said, that this stuff was actually part of what the original consideration that we asked that committee to look at. And what I think is great is that it has provided us a lot of flexibility to, as Commissioner Jacob has suggested, solve the immediate need, and then to also in future address some of the additional needs. And it provides us with some time to gather community input, to discuss about regional juvenile concerns. So the reason that I wrote the letter to the editor that was in the paper really was this concern that it's a bad situation if our jail is closed and we have not moved forward, and that the hope is that the Department of Corrections will in fact grant us an extension because we are moving forward. So I would be fine if Commissioner Jacob wants to separate some of the sections of the resolution off because he wants to be able to vote for the purchase of buildings for additional parking. But I do support addressing all of the issues that are in the resolution today.
Yeah, I can support number two. And so we've got we've got two paragraphs. We got this number two and that number two.
Now therefore.
Well, one's a whereas, yeah, and the other one's now therefore. They kind of repeat.
Well, and you're alluding to number two, the direct.
So one has 6 and one has 5.
Purchase additional land for parking. Now that is using the money that the state legislature, or is how much money? Well, do we open our hand? How much of that's left?
It depends on, it depends on that.
Yeah, however the board wants to do it, I can support number 2 at this point.
Well, I'm sorry, part of that, as far as parking space, I mean, we talk about our partners with the city and the Fastenal. Do we know what's happening in the neighborhood for parking? I thought Fastenal, or was it Rep. Bob Curlin, did he buy the old Y and that's talked about making it into a parking facility, or is that for the Fastenal operation?
The original purchase.
I mean, we're talking about taking some tax-paying property off the tax rolls to create parking space, correct? Okay, all right.
Yeah, it's a
some business.
Small area, but
right, but it is taking. So, but we don't know what the plan is. I mean, as I drive in and see that humongous building,
we do.
Right,
we know that they plan on putting between 400 and 500 employees here, which is going to generate a lot of traffic. We know that they own the Y, and they're intended, or that what they said at the time they bought it was to raise it for parking. there are some other things in the works that we haven't confirmed.
Yeah, we
But
don't know.
certainly, I think Fastenal believes that there's a need for parking in the area.
But of course, Commissioner Meyer was going to shut down fossil fuel cars, so then we don't have to worry about parking, right, Commissioner Meyer?
No, we could still have cars. They just wouldn't be fossil
Oh, they
fuel,
would be.
right?
That's right. That's right.
Ideally, they would be smaller, and so you wouldn't need.
But my point, of course, was that some things are aspirational. I don't intend to do it today.
Okay, we all ride our bicycles. Okay, so it's an unknown, I guess, is that we need additional land for parking.
Well, I mean,
does it say in our union contracts that we have to provide parking
no,
for
but we
employees?
established that we had some parking issues previously, and then now we're taking 25 spaces off the table that we already have.
Right.
So
when we did the space consolidation study and we sold the government center, we're getting more and more concentrated in this area. The county is. It makes logical sense to me that if there's parking available in the area and we have some federal funds available, that we'd be fools not to take advantage of that and be more
state funds.
And be more in control of our own destiny than being hopeful that someone else is going to build us some parking in the area.
Yeah.
Well, I'd take a can of white paint and remove some of those yellow lines that say I can't park, in the neighborhood and stuff. So okay, I mean, it is a point. If we have
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Meyer.
Yeah, thank you. Given that, I would move that we separate what has been presented to us as Resolution 2020 and modify that to be two resolutions breaking off the first whereas bullet point 2, which has to do with parking, and address that as a separate resolution.
I'd second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion to separate under the whereas number 2, direct county staff to negotiate the purchase of additional land for parking.
Would that be under the whereas or under the be it therefore resolved?
It's also number 2 under the now therefore be it resolved. So it's separating that.
Okay.
But the action
concept.
actually comes under the resolve part, right?
Yes.
Okay. Negotiate purchase of land.
I would think it's the second one that actually, both of them, but.
Madam Chair?
Well, and I really shouldn't say lawn. It should be, being that we're creating a campus here, which again, I go back, way back before any of you, that was a goal. So it should say anybody. It shouldn't just say, yeah. Commissioner Kavesi.
Yeah. Is Commissioner Meyer making a motion that we vote on item 2 of the now therefore be it resolved? If not, I would like to move that we vote on item 2 of the now therefore be it resolved section.
Well, I mean, I think that I was just moving to separate them into 2 resolutions.
So you have to act
Okay. Well, then
not,
I would second that. Do you want to?
No, Commissioner Jacob.
We had a second. Commissioner
Jacobs. Yeah.
And so
all right.
The motion is to separate out the purchasing of land for parking.
Right. And
into a separate vote.
Yes.
Correct. Okay. To a separate vote.
Right.
Okay. Does everybody understand what we're trying to accomplish? All right. No more discussion. We'll take a roll call. Commissioner Meyer.
Meyer votes aye.
Kavesi.
Commissioner Kavesi votes aye.
Olson.
Olson, aye.
Okay. Commissioner Jacob.
Jacob, aye.
And Commissioner Ward will vote aye to separate it. Okay, so that passes. So wishes of the board, you want to vote on that particular item?
I would make the motion that Marie Kavesi just made to vote on that number 2 separately now.
Okay. So your second, Commissioner Kavesi, were you making that a motion to direct staff?
To approve item number 2 on the now therefore be it resolved section, which deals with the parking spaces.
And I'd second that.
Okay. Is there one concern I would have, is there a dollar figure?
One of
Or
the
is it
reasons
using the state funds that were allocated?
No, I'm not recommending that, because any discussion about real estate transactions, we would probably do in a closed session when we get down to actually talking about funding. This is just to give us direction, Karen and I, to start the process of negotiation to figure out where we're at, and then we can come back to the board with particulars.
Okay, so if it's a gazillion dollars, we can still vote it down.
Yeah, it's not to purchase the property, it's to
Just
start the process. of
Okay,
negotiation.
all right, I can understand that. All right,
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Yeah, I just think that regardless of the size of the construction that we're going to be involved in, we are going to need those additional parking spaces. So that's why I made this motion.
Okay, and if, I'm sorry to disagree a little bit, if we continue to have many people working from home, will we really need more parking?
There's always parking for the public.
With real estate as hard as it is to come by right now in this area, if it's available and we can make it available, and we're not having to eminent domain anything from anyone, I support the idea.
Okay, there's a very important thing, eminent domain. Is that on the table or off the table?
We haven't started the negotiation process.
Okay, all right. A closed session? Okay, all right, so everybody knows. Okay, all those, let's see, will everybody understand the motion to direct staff to start negotiating the purchase? All right, we'll do a roll call. Commissioner Meyer?
Meyer votes aye.
Commissioner Kavesi?
Commissioner Kavesi votes aye.
Commissioner Olson?
Olson, aye.
Commissioner Jacob?
Jacob, aye.
Commissioner Ward? There will be more discussion. This is just to start negotiations. So I'll go along with it for now, but I reserve the right to vote no in the future. So it passes. You can start negotiating. All right, so we take both number 2s out of the resolution. The wishes of the board on the rest of the resolution. Is there anything else that we want to separate out? Okay, the wishes of the board.
Well, I'll just state that it's probably obvious that I intend to vote against this because of cost and size. These other pieces I feel should probably be coming before the board individually for discussion. So collectively, I don't need to separate them at this point. I'm gonna vote no on the remainder.
And I, with my feeling that the public hasn't had, at least a minimum of 12 people that took the time, energy, and effort to speak to us today, I think they would like to see this and realize where this is going and be able to weigh in. And I'm sure there's many more than 12. 12 just happened to be speakers today. So I would like to delay a vote to give them time to at least express to us individually or as a group their concerns with this resolution.
Madam Chair, is that a motion?
I'll move to table the vote.
I feel it's a little redundant. We already kind of went down this road with discussing whether we would have a discussion and public hearing about a smaller jail.
Oh, I have to. Commissioner Meyer, I made the motion yet.
Oh.
I'll second the motion. I think we know where it's going. We'll go through the process.
All right. Being
to table it, essentially, you're saying, right?
To table it to allow at minimum the
Yes.
public to weigh in.
Yep.
All right, so do you want me to run the meeting from this point for a few minutes?
Yes,
Okay.
please. That's
all right.
our
So,
rules.
so the motion was made by Commissioner Ward. It was seconded by Commissioner Jacob. Is there any discussion?
Actually, it's, if it's to lay on
Oh.
the table, it's not debatable.
Yeah, we
Oh,
can't.
sorry.
Right.
So we move to the vote?
Yeah, we go right to vote.
Okay. All right. So I will do a roll call vote. The motion is to table the resolution before us with the exceptions that have been made already. So Commissioner Kavesi?
Commissioner Kavesi votes no.
Commissioner Olson?
Olson, nay.
Commissioner Ward? Commissioner Ward?
Aye.
I'm sorry if you'd answered and I didn't hear you. Commissioner Jacob?
Jacob, aye.
And Commissioner Vire votes nay. So the motion does not pass. Madam Chair?
Yes.
I will move that we pass the resolution as it has been adjusted to move forward with option D for the 80-bed facility and the additional conversations and including the community in those conversations as we've adjusted the proposal that was given to us by staff.
Okay, we have a motion to adopt the resolution for the 80 classified bed facility. Do we have a second?
Commissioner Kavesi seconds.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Meyer, seconded by Commissioner Kavesi to adopt the resolution with the number twos basically deleted out of that. Any other discussion? Commissioner Jacob.
Yeah, I don't think we could discuss anything further that we haven't probably run through the mill at one point or another in the other discussions today. But, you know, I won't support it when it comes forward.
Yeah. Personally, it's very hard to even discuss this. This is the holiday season, and this whole COVID thing has really put a stress on our holiday season too. And then to say Merry Christmas, tax-paying constituents. Here's a minimum $20 million Christmas card. It's not a check; it's a bill. So, in the holiday of giving, I can't support it. So. Timing, life is all about timing. So I'll call, proceed to vote. Roll call, Commissioner Meyer.
Meyer votes aye.
Commissioner Kavesi.
Commissioner Kavesi votes aye.
Commissioner Olson.
Olson, aye.
Jacob.
Jacob, nay.
And Ward, nay. So carries 3-2. All right, let's see. That ends our regular meeting. Commissioner Meyer.
Yes, I had a board action. I would like the board to review together our respectful workplace policy and our ground rules for communication. I'm hoping that each of us can renew our commitment to creating an environment that is not hostile or threatening. And I have some concerns that our policies don't go far enough to protect our staff. So I'd like to talk about what other counties maybe do in terms of their policies.
Commissioner Kavesi, or Madam Chair.
Yes, Commissioner Kavesi.
I would just like to add, without any need for further discussion, we could try to be more consistent with the use of titles. It seems like a lot of times I'm referred to as Kavesi and not Commissioner Kavesi. So that's just a point of order.
Okay, I'll stand.
But I would support this motion.
I apologize if I've done that. Maybe I try and say commissioner before everybody's name, but I apologize if you're.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Me.
Yeah.
All right. So is that a motion and a second?
I believe so. I believe so.
Okay. To move it to a future county board agenda.
To see whether there's 3 commissioners.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
So we need a vote of 3. So roll call. Commissioner Meyer.
Meyer votes aye. No, wait. What are we voting on? We don't need a vote.
It takes just her
It takes
motion
just
and her
2.
second to get it, and then next time we'll
Next
decide.
time it's 3. I'm
right.
Sorry. You're right.
Then we'll
Right.
Takes
see
2.
the whole board wants to discuss it.
Yeah. Okay. So it shows up next time.
Or at some future day, it does not have to be next time, but yeah.
An announcement?
Oh, did you have a board action that you wanted to?
No.
No?
No,
Okay.
it's futile. Okay.
I took great heart from looking at the work that we did in our community with the CARES Act funding that was allocated to the county. And the number of individuals we helped, the school systems that we helped, the work that we did to try and expand our broadband access, and how we were able to really help some of those sectors that were the hardest hit by COVID. And I know that there was a lot of effort on the part of the administrator, but also on a lot of all of our other staff. And I really just want to say thank you for the work that was done. And I'm hopeful. The state legislature has allocated another $1 million to us. And so after the first of the year, when that money arrives, that we'll be able to extend some of these programs additionally. So thanks.
All right. Thank you. Is there any other business to come before the Winona County Board today?
Move to adjourn.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Commissioner Jacob, seconded by Commissioner Olson to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Stay safe. Bye-bye.
Yes.
Bye.
Yes.